Chapter 1520. The principle of the magic protection circle was more like a kind of energy counteracting. As the largest energy overflow point of planet Azeroth, it was extremely difficult for normal magic to break through the magic defense of the Sunwell Highland. Duque could do it, but unfortunately the investment was not proportional to the results. It was too much of a waste for him to use the magic net's energy to fight the overflow of energy from the entire planet. He had a simpler and less troublesome way, and that was Naxxramas. Why did Fatibu capture the Eridar Gemini to use as an anti-air cannon? It was because it was not worth it to use energy to counteract mass and explosion. The magic of the Sunwell Highland did not just supply the shield. Most of the energy flowed into the summoning circle on the side of the Sunwell. Seeing Naxxramas arrive, Fatibu was also dumbfounded. The Eridar Gemini shrugged, indicating that they could not handle a Titan relic of this size. Fatibu did not say anything else. Follow the plan. Defend the main road. Almost from the moment the demons of the Sunwell saw Naxxramas enter their field of vision, Duque clearly felt that the evil energy overflowing from the Sunwell had become stronger. Others might only have a simple feeling that the summoning ritual might have been accelerated. But how much was added was just a feeling. On Duque's retina, there was a clear linear chart, and the energy storage of the Sunwell was decreasing. In addition, the system elf had been analyzing the magic circle pattern sent back by the Gemini 24 hours a day, judging its function and endurance limit, and had basically come to a conclusion. Duque's lips curled into a mysterious smile. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to attack. But I have a small request. First, you must advance step by step, very cautiously, and spend an hour on the road to reach Calegos. Then it will take 30 minutes to save Calegos. This way, you will be able to conserve your strength to deal with the next burst of speed. If the person who said this was not Duque, the leaders would have probably gone up and slapped him a few times. If possible, of course, everyone wanted to smoothly deal with the demons of the Burning Legion. Battles were always full of surprises. No one could guarantee that the other party did not have any trump cards. But Duque had quantified the unpredictable battle. He opened his palm, and a 3D image of the Sunwell Highland appeared in front of everyone. From the outer garden, to the long and narrow corridor, to the place where the leaders fought, every enemy's appearance, ability effects, range, and even vitality were accurately marked out. As for the so-called vitality assessment, everyone was only skeptical about it. But seeing that the spy's intelligence was so reliable, everyone could only lament in their hearts. If they had successfully tricked Kill Jaden this time, then the egg would not have lost unjustly. Everyone received the order and gathered most of the Alliance experts to enter. Apart from Duque and his direct subordinates, Vashj, Aurelia, and Sasha, who were still pregnant, were unable to participate. The rest were all present. There was nothing much to say about the process of beating up Calegos. The current Calegos was at the level of an adult dragon, not even an ancient dragon. In terms of strength and difficulty, there was no way he could compare to the strengthened version of the fallen Veristas in Blackwing's nest. What's more, his admirer Madagosa was holding the fort. If they couldn't even win against him, then the Alliance's powerhouses should all hang themselves. Who am I? Where am I? What did I do? Calegos, who had finally regained his senses, was still confused. In order to reduce the consumption of his body, he had turned into a blue-haired young man. Fortunately, there was a familiar dragon like Madagosa beside him, so Calegos quickly calmed down. Madagosa, you changed your appearance? For some reason, Calegos looked at Madagosa, who had transformed into a human, and suddenly felt that she was very pleasing to the eye. Can I touch you? Looking at Calegos' outstretched hand, Madagosa could not help but be overjoyed. Yes, if you want to touch. She had thrown in what Duque had given her a long time ago. Although she felt that she was in danger of riding a dragon, she quickly relaxed. The relationship between dragons was a little simple and crude. If they liked each other, they would communicate when they were in heat. After that, the male dragon would scram to wherever he wanted to go. The crude male dragons were not in the mood to raise their offspring. Taking care of the children was the female dragon's job. Once the young dragons passed the youngest fledgling stage and grew into young dragons, they would have to scram. After all, with the Dragon Slumber Temple backing them, there were really not many people in this world who dared to bully young dragons. To put it bluntly, young dragons were very powerful. 99% of the time, young dragons were already very lucky not to bully other intelligent races. The Alliance's performance was so strong that the demons in the Sunwell were a little flustered. One had to know that Kil'jaeden's original order was to hold on for another 8 hours. It had only been 1.5 hours, and the first Guardian, Kalegos, had been defeated. Fatty Boo asked softly, "Lord Kil'jaeden, should we use a portion of the Sunwell's energy to teleport a few high-level Void Lords over first?" A cold snort came from the other side of the portal. "Humph. Useless guy. I knew you guys were unreliable. It's fine. Duke Marcus is scheming against me, and I'm also scheming against him. He thinks he can stop me when I'm halfway over. Does he really think he can predict Eridar's most exquisite teleportation spell? When he comes over, I'll already be in my complete form. Go. Brutalis, as long as you hold on for another half an hour, it will be a complete victory for the Burning Legion." As the voice trailed off, 2 huge red palms with sharp black nails suddenly reached out from the portal. The size of the red palms was so large that it looked like it could easily squeeze a lightweight light tank in its hands like a fitness ball. The palms were trying to pry open the portal that was originally only 10 meters in diameter. The sound of the dimensional barrier cracking and tearing echoed throughout the hall. However, the Eridar twins who were waiting at the entrance of the hall were shocked to find that they did not feel any increase in the dark energy overflowing from the hall. This was the scary thing about Kil'jaeden. In terms of perception, it was like an old bull starting to drag a cart and slowly accelerate. In fact, Kil'jaeden was already whipping the horse, completing the construction of the portal at the speed of the warhorse's sprint. This move of the Burning Legion's commander shocked every demon present. To be able to instantly release a terrifying power that could tear a large area of space apart in a mere hall. How powerful must one's control over space be? They really wanted to say that what they saw and heard were all illusions. But right now, the massive energy of the Sunwell was under their surveillance, turning into specks of light that dissipated into the teleportation magic circle. There was really no way to fake it. Chapter 1521. Just Kil'jaeden's ability to overturn rivers and seas and shatter space was enough to make the Eridar twins unable to resist. For a moment, they saw each other's shock and hesitation. Their previous decision to rely on Duke now seemed a little wrong. The desperate situation they were in the Burning Legion made betrayal seem like an inevitable thing. However, if the result of betrayal was absolute destruction, then the greedy twins would rather continue to be the lowliest maggots in the Legion than have the slightest thought of betrayal. Unfortunately, it was too late. Kil'jaeden was terrifying, and Duke Marcus was no saint. If they retreated at the last moment, Duke would never let them go. It was Duke who forced them to betray him. Once they betrayed their boss, even if Azeroth was destroyed, Duke would drag them down with him. Moreover, demons did not accept betrayal. If betrayal could be easily forgiven, then there would be more betrayers swarming out. So Kil'jaeden would never let them off just because they confessed. After Nazul's betrayal, Kil'jaeden was very sensitive to the word betrayal. Even when he mentioned Nazul, his demeanor was full of madness. In any case, there was no turning back. The twins bowed their heads deeply, trembling to show their awe of Kil'jaeden's boundless power. This was how they should behave after being deprived of their status as feudal lords. What should be done had been done. The rest was up to their new boss Duke. In the empty command post, Duke received the latest news. It was not from the twins, but from his early arrangements. As a transmigrator, he knew that sooner or later the Sunwell would be messed up by the egg, so of course he had a backup plan. The Elven Queen was his own harem, so it was normal to add something in the name of renovation. It was the simplest passive detection, a dark energy crystal that would react differently according to the concentration of dark energy. From the inside to the outside, Duque had personally controlled the mirror image avatar to set up 30 circuits. Almost as soon as Kill Jaden exerted his power, Duque received it and sent the order to the front line on the spot. Kill Jaden was well prepared. He knew that Duque was scheming against him. At first, his progress was slow, and he didn't even show up. When he saw that it was about time, he suddenly exerted his strength. If not for these arrangements, Duque would really have been deceived by him. What surprised Duque was that 2 minutes later, he received an urgent message from Gemini. Furthermore, it was specifically stated that it had happened 2 minutes ago, so there was at most 28 minutes left. Duque grinned. It seems that the demon sisters are going all out. Since you have truly acknowledged me as your master, I will not disappoint you. If the alliance didn't succeed, they would also die along with it. They didn't care if they would be discovered or not. Gemini almost risked her life to send a message. Just as the hero group was about to reach Fatty Boo, they received a messenger from Duque. It was a very special messenger. When the messenger used his strong arms to lift his cloak, Imriel was dumbfounded. She could recognize this guy even if it took her a long time to do so. Years ago, when he destroyed Shatrath City, his strength and brutality were incomparably famous in the entire Drenii circle. He was none other than Master Howl Grom Hellscream. For a moment, Imriel almost jumped on the spot. But she immediately realized that this Lord Howl was not a living person. His explosive muscle lines were clearly visible, and the details of the beard and tooth ornaments on his face were meticulously detailed. Imriel could even feel the surging blood vessels under his green skin, as well as the heat coming out of his thick nostrils. But he was definitely not a living beast man. His body was too perfect. There was not a trace of sweat or dirt on him, and his overly pure arcane energy waves told others that he was an elemental creature. You really came. The one who spoke was Tyrion Fordring. He was a powerhouse of the Alliance who fought on the front lines since World War II. He had the right to speak to Lord Howl. Beastmen keep their words, Lord Howl replied firmly. Tyrion smiled. I know. You don't fight for the Alliance, but for Duke Marcus's kindness. Lord Howl nodded, but looked like he was unwilling to say another word. Tyrion smiled unconcerned. The powerhouses of the Alliance all showed similar kind smiles, and made way for him. Queen She even nodded at him. Grom was stunned, but he still nodded in return. Seeing this scene, Imriel's curiosity was about to explode. Why would a heroic beast man be so respected by the Alliance? At this moment Kalia tugged at her hand. Imriel, Grom made many mistakes, but he was a real man of responsibility, and he was an out-and-out hero. When he was alive, he was indeed a tribal chief, but after his death, he was only loyal to Duque to repay a debt of gratitude. Kalia quickly gave a brief introduction about Lord Howl. She finally understood. Grom had died last month. At the age of 60, this was unimaginable among Beastman warriors. No Beastman warrior could fight their whole life and die peacefully in their own bed. Usually, only a respectable shaman could have such an ending. Although there were dissenting opinions among the Beastmen that Grom should have died on the battlefield like a true Beastman, Thrall stood his ground and gave Grom a grand burial. He also publicly announced that Grom would keep his promise to repay Duque and not become a Death Knight to continue serving the tribe. This caused a huge controversy among the Beastmen and even the entire tribe. Then there was Lord Howl, who appeared in the Alliance's hero group. The wise leader of the Alliance had already figured out why. To kill Fatty Boo quickly, and without scaring Kill Jaden away, Grom was definitely the best candidate. In the entire Alliance and even the Burning Legion, everyone knew Lord Howl's nickname, the Bane of the Lords of the Abyss. To be able to kill the Lord of the Abyss, one of the main races of the Burning Legion, Lord Howl was the only one in the world. It wasn't an assassination but a head-on confrontation. Against the Lords of the Abyss, Lord Howl always used an axe. I alone am enough, Grom said. Then, the powerhouses of the Alliance put away their swords, as if they were watching a show. Brutalis is a high-level Lord of the Void, Iryll said softly. She had said it for Kalia to hear. But who knew that Lord Howl would hear it? Lord Howl glared at Hoof, and suddenly, Hoof felt as if he had been hit by petrifying gaze. and couldn't say a word. A body that surpasses my peak at 18 years old, and 60 years of battle experience. If I can't even deal with an Lord of the Abyss, Grom Hellscream doesn't have the right to continue existing in this world. Chapter 1522. Lord Roar was full of himself. To be honest, this was the complete opposite of the humility of the Alliance's mainstream chivalry. Chivalry emphasized humility, while orc warriors sought to be flamboyant. If they hadn't known each other for more than 20 years, someone might have really talked back to Lord Roar. However, they had worked together in Molten Core, Blackwing's Nest, and Mount Hyjal. The tacit understanding between them made the Alliance powerhouses smile at each other. Duque told me to finish that guy in 10 minutes. Excluding the small talk just now, there are only 5 minutes left. Although Grom said this, no one saw the urgency on his face. This was a powerhouse, a top-notch powerhouse with absolute confidence in his martial arts and combat ability. If he had had such an opportunity when he was alive, he might have been able to break through the boundaries of the divine realm and enter the demigod realm. Now this path wasn't blocked. However, he didn't have the unparalleled skill, so Duque definitely couldn't let him advance to the demigod realm first. After leaving the palace where they defeated Calegos, they walked through a roof corridor that wasn't too long. It was about the height of 3 stories, and they would arrive at a huge gap. The huge Brutalus was already waiting in the vast empty space in front of them. According to the original plan, everyone had to jump down from the gap in the palace to fight Fatty Boo. Insignificant mortals. You've dawdled for so long, and you're finally willing to die? The Lord of the Abyss was like a small mountain. No matter when he looked at it, it was always so oppressive. However, Lord Roar didn't care. So what if you have a lower body like a dragon? So what if you have a mouth full of fangs? Can you still scare me after your arms are modified? Master Howl single-handedly held his world-famous killing weapon, the battle-axe Bloodhowl. The battle-axe, which resembled a curved nose, seemed to be humming, because its owner had surpassed his own limits. The crimson glow on the blade of the battle-axe continued to shine. Looking at Fatty Boo, who was arrogantly mocking the Alliance's hero group, Lord Roar grinned. Idiot, after I chop your head off, I'll let you talk all you want. Grom slowly changed his posture. It was very close to the position of squatting in the toilet, but his upper body was straight, which made him look weird. Although it looked a little funny, no one in the Alliance underestimated this posture. At this moment Grom moved. In front of the vigilant Fatty Boo, Grom shot out like a spring that had been pulled to its limit. Using the height of a 3-story building, Grom jumped a height that mortals couldn't even reach in pole vaulting. Grom, who was no longer a mortal, jumped 10 stories in one go. When he reached the height limit of his high jump, his whole body tilted downwards and his feet up. With a fierce stare, the arcane energy that appeared in the void became his stepping stone. Immediately, his whole body shot towards Fatty Boo like a cannonball. Even the experienced and knowledgeable Fatty Boo was falling at an incredible speed. It was as if a star had fallen from the sky. The Lords of the Abyss were born with huge and bloated bodies, and it was destined that they would never be able to dodge. No matter what kind of attack it was, he had to take it head-on. Ha! Brutalus raised his modified arms. His right arm, which was equipped with a double-edged sword, and his left arm, which was equipped with a serrated machete, formed an X shape, firmly blocking Grom's path of descent. Who knew that Lord Howl, who had become an arcane energy creature, had agility that he definitely didn't have when he was alive? In the blink of an eye, when Lord Howl landed in front of Fatty Boo's double-edged sword, he suddenly rolled forward 3 times, dangerously changing his path of descent, and went over from the top of the X shape. Faced with Grom's snake-like movements, the anxious Fatty Boo swung his arms upwards. He wanted to kill Grom in midair. When the powerful swings that cut through the air attacked Grom with unimaginable destructive power, Fatty Boo saw the orc hero's rugged face and smiled mockingly. Thunderstrike. Although Grom had used a skill unique to warriors, Fatty Boo was still shocked to see Grom stretch out his legs to kick the double-edged sword. His legs, which looked extremely slender, had actually kicked the huge sword that was more than 10 times heavier. Under normal circumstances, Even with the protection of the epic ranked leg armor, Shifang's legs should have broken under his powerful attack. Even if he had miraculously blocked it, he would still have been sent flying by the powerful force. Fatty Boo's attack didn't break Grom's legs, but it didn't feel easy to send him flying either. Instead, it felt like a premeditated self-rebound. Sure enough, Grom suddenly used another warrior skill, Intercept. After he was sent flying for less than 2 meters, he turned into a flash of green light and rushed towards the defenseless Fatty Boo's chest at lightning speed. Half of Fatty Boo's vision was suddenly filled with the domineering Grom. He couldn't block it. He definitely couldn't block it. Even though Brutalis believed in the defensive ability of his breastplate, he didn't want to believe that this little orc could kill him with an axe. However, Manarotha's mistake always stimulated his nerves. After all, Grom Hellscream was a terrifying existence that had killed a Lord of the Abyss with an axe. At the last moment, Fatty Boo shrank back and tried his best to lean back, hoping that he could dodge Lord Howl's axe. Compared to the retreating Fatty Boo, Lord Howl's attack was faster. He combined the momentum of falling from the sky with all the strength in his body, burning all his anger for an attack. It could be described as a meteor. The holy light was the power of the clergy's will, and so was the anger of a warrior. With a red flash that looked like a prairie fire, Grom's body accelerated a second time, and the destructive power of the axe increased at an unimaginable speed. In the next moment, the ear-piercing sound of metal clashing suddenly rang out in the empty grassland. It was the sound of a battleship being split in half by an axe. To everyone's surprise, the special alloy breastplate on Brutalis' chest, that was at least a meter thick, exploded into countless pieces. The crimson blood roar accurately slashed Fatty Boo's chest. Fatty Boo's expression of disbelief and fear was the background of the scene. Impossible. Idiot. I only used one axe strike against your boss. Do you think I'll use a second strike against you? Grom's face was filled with absolute pride. Brutalis' body began to convulse. The Lord of the Abyss was indeed powerful, but the entire race was the same. Those who were weaker than them would definitely not be able to defeat them, but those who were slightly stronger could definitely take care of them. There was not the slightest bit of uncertainty. The blood-red color spread throughout Fatty Boo's body. Just by looking at his appearance, one could imagine the scene of the Lord of the Abyss burning from the inside out. In a trance, Imriel felt as if she could smell burning flesh. Chapter 1523. Brutalis, who was as huge as a small mountain, let out a final scream. His bloated body, which was originally supported by 4 legs that were thicker than elephant legs, suddenly fell to the ground. Strangely, it didn't fall like most monsters. Perhaps because its lower body was too bloated, it actually looked like a roly-poly doll. Its 4 hooves were loosened, and its lower abdomen was on the ground. Its upper body was limp, and it tilted its head to the side. Oh! Pulling out Bloodhowl. Lord Howl stood on Bupang's shoulder with one foot and stepped on the side of Bupang's face. He let out a howl that was full of orc characteristics. Barbaric, rough, and extremely morale-boosting. He was shouting for his new life, for himself to surpass the peak. Hero's age. How many times had he been ashamed of his weakness in the last battle? How many times had he endured the scorn and provocation of young orcs without being able to retaliate? Grom didn't want to admit that he was old, and he didn't want to announce that his passion as a warrior had cooled. Today, he finally found the feeling of charging into the battlefield and letting go of himself. Following his heart, and not losing his friends was the life he wanted to live. The heroes of the Alliance were stunned at first. Then, led by Tyrion, many people began to applaud. Tyrion even felt a little envious of Grom. The decline brought by aging was becoming more and more obvious. He remembered when the 5 Silver Saints first appeared. They were all young people around 20 years old. In the blink of an eye, 25 years had passed, and Tyrion was almost 50 years old. Sometimes, he couldn't help but wonder if he should learn from the queens and Grom and follow Duque. After all, eternal life and eternal youth were temptations that mortals couldn't resist. However, Tyrion immediately chased this thought out of his mind. The path of the holy light didn't allow for any distracting thoughts. If there came a day when the world needed him to do this, he would do it. Otherwise, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. This was the path of the holy light. Grom really killed a high-tier Void Lord with one swing of his axe. This scene shocked Imrian. Even if he didn't want to admit it, he had to admit that when an orc hero like Grom was on his side, the feeling of killing an enemy was completely different. Is Grom Hellscream the strongest? Imriel muttered to himself. At some point, Queen Sylvanas walked to her side. You're just the best at single-target attacks, but you're good at dealing with meat shields like the Lord of the Abyss. It was rare for another leader to talk to him, so Imriel quickly asked, Is there anything else? Don't be too envious of him. Everyone had their own characteristics. Although Grom was ferocious, if he encountered an agile opponent or someone who was good at using mirror clones, such as Duque, he would lose. Grom's only fate is to be dragged to death. Queen Sylvie briefly mentioned how she and her sister worked together to deal with Grom in Southshore. No matter how high his attack power was, it would be a waste of stamina if he missed. Grom's single-target damage was extremely high. Even if there were too many of them, they wouldn't be able to deal with him. On the contrary, weapons like Ashbringer were very suitable for mass destruction. It could be said that everyone's unique characteristics determined the type of battle they fought. Just then, Magni Bronzebeard hit the floor with his hammer. Since no one has lost anything, let's continue. The Alliance powerhouses understood tacitly and continued to move forward with ease. 2 battles in a row didn't consume too much energy. In the first battle, Matagosa put in the most effort. After saving Kalegos, she retreated with her dragon. In the second battle, Lord Howl called it a day, and everyone became a spectator. It could be said that the Alliance powerhouses were at most warming up. They had the ability and reason to continue advancing. At this time, the problem was thrown to Kil'jaeden. The gatekeepers of the 2 checkpoints were taken down so easily. This unexpected situation shocked Kil'jaeden. His eyes widened, and his eyeballs rolled twice. As a master conspirator, Egg obviously felt the smell of conspiracy. This result was normal. After all, the Alliance didn't use any god-level combat power. In Kil'jaeden's eyes, it was just like chickens pecking at each other. However, the Alliance seemed to be better at dealing with him. It was understandable that it was abnormal, because the rhythm was too coincidental. He sped up the teleportation. Although he tried to cover it up, the Alliance seemed to have sped up to match his speed. Conspirators didn't believe in coincidences. It wasn't impossible to continue with the plan, but in order to be safe, he had to get a reputable high-level Void Lord to hold the fort, and it had to be a strong fighter who could fight against a demigod. This way, he had to delay the opening of the ultimate portal. Gamble or not gamble? This was a big problem. There were only 2 paths to choose. Kil'jaeden was sinister, cunning, cruel and heartless, but he wasn't a hot-blooded fool. In these 10 seconds, his brain calculated countless possibilities and ways to deal with it. What motivated him was his infinite confidence in himself and the absolute dignity of a powerhouse. I am Kil'jaeden, the leader of the Burning Legion. I have never been defeated on countless battlefields. I have destroyed thousands of planets and made billions of living beings cry in despair. Sargeras and Archimonde's failure doesn't equal my failure. The Burning Legion has been shamed too much recently. There must be a top powerhouse who stands up and declares the Legion's terror and invincibility. Alun can't do it directly. All I have to deal with is a Duke Marcus and a few weak demigods. As long as I have 60% of my strength to enter this world, I will be absolutely invincible. Kil'jaeden made up his mind. No matter what, he shouldn't shrink back into the distorted void with his tail between his legs. Sargeras's failure was due to his carelessness. He had personally tried something as dangerous as soul possession. He really didn't know what to say about him. Archimonde was too reckless, and he finally bore the consequences under the suppression of the world. And he, Kil'jaeden, was the wisest and most suitable person to lead the Burning Legion. At the very least, he should be above Archimonde. Now the chance to prove himself had come. Kil'jaeden gritted his teeth. He no longer used his hands to tear space apart. He began to stretch his head over. Only when his body truly entered this world could he better observe the flaws of this world and speed up the tearing of the space barrier. This wasn't an easy task. After all, he had to bypass the planet's Azeroth defense, forcefully find a flaw, and use the planet's energy to attract each other to open a new gap. In the command center, Vashj, who had settled everything, came to Duque's side. She became that obedient maid again. Master, are you so sure that Kil'jaeden will take the bait? Of course, because he's a gambler. Chapter 1524. Regardless of how Kil'jaeden was used to scheming and carrying out all kinds of sinister and cunning plans, he was actually similar to Duque in his bones. They both liked to win big with small. His small was to invest small. This way, once he succeeded, he would feel a greater sense of accomplishment in his heart. After all, after living for so long, it could be said that he had seen all kinds of storms. There were not many things that could arouse his interest. In fact, for a period of time, the reports from the Burning Legion's subordinates were all the same, making him a little numb. No matter what civilization, what race, the powerful military power of the Burning Legion could directly flatten them. No one could stop hundreds of millions of demons. Now they suddenly encountered a hedgehog that not only blocked the Legion's steps, but also stabbed them until their hands were covered in blood, causing 2 of the 3 powerhouses to be temporarily disabled. This did not make Kil'jaeden feel ashamed or angry. Instead, it aroused his competitive spirit. So unknowingly, Kil'jaeden's gambling spirit became heavier. When Duke spoke with fervor and assurance, analyzing the details of Kil'jaeden's mentality perfectly, a charming smile appeared on Vashj's face. Sure enough, this is why I waited for 10,000 years and swore to serve the master of eternal life. Duque's face turned red. He was really afraid that he would not be able to control himself and have another maid who had nothing better to do. Cough cough, there was something important now. The Alliance's rapid elimination of the Sunwell's first and second boss posed a real problem for Kil'jaeden. This was like an iron lock across a river, making it difficult for him to advance or retreat. However, since Kil'jaeden had decided to go all out, he naturally had to make a choice. Kil'jaeden's voice came from the depths of the Sunwell's palace complex. Gemini, it's time to test you. The second portal is open. Lead all the low-level Void Lords, and hold off the Alliance's powerhouses. As long as you can ensure that no enemies come to me in 20 minutes, you can immediately become high-level Void Lords again. The Eridar Gemini immediately shivered. Oh my god! This was a good thing that could not be encountered, even once in 10,000 years. If it did not involve a top priority like the Azeroth portal, the probability of promotion in the Legion simply existed in theory. First, they had to be strong enough to meet the combat power requirements of the Lords. Then there were opportunities to deal with unimportant planets. Destroying 1,000,000 of them was no more than stepping on an ant in the eyes of the upper echelons. It was no big deal at all. Ever since the War of the Ancients, because they had chosen that damned Mark Dooku as a spy and the person in charge of opening the teleportation portal, they had been forced to the brink of death by Kil'jaeden. They had to do all the dirty and tiring work, and now they had to become combatants, forced to go to the front lines as cannon fodder. If they could receive such praise and promise from their old boss before they completely betrayed Kil'jaeden, they would probably be overjoyed. But there was no turning back now. Even if it was a dead end, he could only walk it to the end. Queen Saloras suddenly waved her hand. Did you hear that? Lord Kil'jaeden has appointed Aurelius and me as the commanders of the Sunwell. Elises continued. Now we must put enough pressure on the Alliance's experts. But we can't be too aggressive, lest we draw out the opponent's demigod. The eyeballs of the low-tier Void Lords almost popped out of their sockets. What was he supposed to do? Very soon, they understood that they were going to die one by one. And so a funny scene appeared. For example, an Apocalypse Guard suddenly jumped out from a corner. I'm Triple X. Before he could finish, the Alliance's experts attacked. Grom roared, eat my axe. Apocalypse Guards were originally more agile than Abyss Lords, but they were facing the ferocious Alliance's hero squad. Queen Sylvie's arrow, which had increased in power, nailed the Lord in an instant. As a result, Lord Howl's destructive power was on full display. That guy was instantly killed. Another lord turned to ashes, the enraged Ashbringer, which was as heavy as a door, and slashed down. Another burn. Magni, who was in his god's descent state, swung the Balrog hammer. When the peak experts of the Alliance unleashed their strongest destructive power, without any regard for their stamina and energy, the low-stage Void Dukes weren't enough at all. Every time they appeared, they would kill one in a second. In the end, no Void Lords were willing to obey orders. They all suggested, "We won't be able to stall for time like this." In fact, they were unwilling to die. After all, sacrificing oneself for the army was one thing, and sacrificing oneself for no reason was another. After all, even if they could be resurrected after death, their souls would still be weakened, and their strength would drop. "All right then. You will form the final line of defense with us sisters." The Gemini could only give the order. Of course, they could use Kill Jaden's name to force these Void Lords to die, but that would be too obvious. The sand in the hourglass of time continued to flow out. Kill Jaden had requested 20 minutes, but only 5 minutes had passed. The Alliance's hero squad had already charged into the palace guarded by the Gemini. The huge palace door was rudely kicked open. The first thing that appeared in front of the demon lords was Lord Howl, who was holding an axe in his right hand, and his left foot still in the air. It had to be said that with Lord Howl's domineering appearance, he really looked like a group of gangsters. Welcome. Originally, Auras wanted to strike a charming pose and pretend that she knew nothing, and welcome the arrival of the Alliance's hero squad. Suddenly, be it the Eridar Gemini or the Demon Lords, they were all stunned. Just a moment ago, the news that came from outside was that a group of mortals from the Alliance had arrived. However, when the palace door was opened, what the demons saw was a powerful lineup that they had never seen before. The palace door was already very tall as a 3-story building. However, 2 giants that were as tall as the palace door strode in and guarded the 2 sides of the door. They clearly exuded a demigod aura that transcended the mortal world, and they clearly wore crowns that symbolized nobility on their heads. However, they stood on both sides like humble servants, bowing slightly as they welcomed the arrival of the main character. Similarly, there was a red-haired elf woman with a stronger demigod aura, but she wore a black and white lace-made uniform and followed closely behind the main character. What kind of existence could make 2 demigods of noble birth willingly become door guards? What kind of powerful person would make a demigod be a maid? There was only one answer. Azeroth Weave demigod Duke Marcus. No one in the army expected that the Alliance had already sent in their strongest forces, without any warning. Without even greeting them, Duque raised his chin slightly and showed a contemptuous expression. "Clear away all this trash." Chapter 1525. How dare you? A mere native demigod dares to. Arg. Before the demonic guard could finish, a shadow flashed before his eyes, and the flash of the Emperor Courage sword occupied his entire vision. Before Vasht, the sword Emperor Vecnus, was as slow as a tortoise. But before this demonic guard's snail's speed, the tortoise's speed was so fast that it left an afterimage. Using all his muscles, the sword Emperor thrust the Emperor Courage's sword into the gap between the demonic lord's helmet and cheek. Then with a twist, the sharp greatsword pierced through the cheek, and the gap between the lower jaw and the skull into the brain. Just one strike was enough to inflict a fatal wound. Shavala, who was of the same race as Mother Shiraz, swung her 6 long blades at the demon Emperor Vecnus. In fact, all 6 of her blades hit their mark. No wonder she began to imagine the scene of the demon Emperor's body being torn apart, as if she could smell the stench of blood. In fact, what she saw was the scene of her body burning up, and smelled the burning scent of her own flesh. She was shocked by this unexpected scene, and her eyes widened, not knowing why there was such a shameless and mysterious effect like immunity to physical attacks. On the other side, Vasht was even sharper. The seemingly slow snake tail bow was shot out in an instant, and its speed was as fast as lightning. She chopped a demonic lord in the middle of the blade, while the opponent above used multiple arrows to maim another lord. while the opponent below used lightning magic to turn the third lord into charcoal. Finally, she used her snake tail to strangle the crippled one. She had taken care of 3 demonic lords by herself. The might of the number 1 demigod under Duque's command was on full display. By the time Theon, Magni, and Lord Howl had taken care of another, everyone was shocked to find that 6 of the 10 demonic lords in the palace were gone. Only the Eridar twins and 2 fell lords were left. The 2 Darksiders broke out in cold sweat. They had just agreed to cooperate with Gemini's operation, but who knew that when the other party smashed open the door, barged in, and started wantonly, Gemini did not move at all. What was going on? What was going on? They did not know what had happened. Only the Eridar twins knew that Duque had laid his cards on the table. Duque looked at them with a smile. There was only one meaning in his words. He wanted them to hand over their proof of allegiance. Betraying Kil'jaeden was not enough. They were even asked to publicly break off their relationship with the army. "Master, you're really..." Oris said with a reproachful look. "How could we not do our best to carry out Master's orders?" Queen Salola's was extremely charming. The 2 demon lords beside them instinctively felt that something was wrong. Their reactions were not slow. Just as they turned around to face Gemini, they were already hit. "Ah! How dare you betray the army?" One of them was bathed in flames while the other was swallowed by a swamp of darkness. The natural difference in power and level made them defenseless in front of the 2 powerful demons, the Eridar twins. What's more, Gemini had descended with her true body. How could she be compared to them, who had invested less than half of their souls and relied solely on their bodies? Just before they died, they let out mournful cries. At this moment, Vashti dragged her snake tail and pulled the remaining demon lord in front of her. Vashti smiled like a flower. "Hey, did you see it clearly?" That guy hurriedly nodded. "If you saw it clearly, then tell everything that happened here to your master, Kil'jaeden. Now scram." After saying that, Vashti swung her snake tail. The huge demon lord rolled in the air at least 7 or 8 times before falling onto the ground, in an extremely sorry state. When he got up, he did not dare to look at those pairs of mocking eyes. Like a stray dog that had fled with its tail between its legs, it ran towards the depths of the sunwell in fear. On the other side, the Eridar twins slightly tidied up their originally very clean armor. They came in front of Duque and knelt down on both knees. "Great Master Duke Marcus, your most loyal slave, Eridar twins, Oris, Salolas. Greetings, Master." Accompanied by a clear voice, the twins knelt down in unison. This scene made the leaders of the Alliance feel endless emotions in their hearts. Not long ago, the Burning Legion wantonly invaded Azeroth. From the first time the Dark Gate sent beastmen to invade, to the third battle of the Dark Gate, the Burning Legion's Nazul Scourge army, to the arrival of the Archerons, and then to the Outland to cause trouble. Every time, it was not the Legion that acted recklessly, high and mighty, appearing in front of the intelligent races of Azeroth with the expression of crushing ants. Now it was completely the opposite. Although Duque had a long history of subduing foreign races, starting from the earliest weak chicken clans Murlocs and Nagas, up until now, Duque's great achievement of subduing subordinates of other races could only be described as explosively amazing. First, he once subdued the Windrunner family, including the current queen of Sindorii Sylvanas. Then, he subdued the entire Karaji insect people empire, which was led by 2 demigods and the twin emperors. Then he subdued the Naga tribe, which was led by the demigod Vashti, who dominated the central region of the Outland and caused the Alliance to be unable to advance. And now, he actually stepped on the face of the Burning Legion's commander, Kil'jaeden, and snatched over the 2 female adjutants that originally belonged to Kil'jaeden. No one knew how Duque did it. Other than admiration, everyone could only look up to him. The one who was most shaken was, of course, Imriel. As the archenemy of Eridar, the hatred between the Draenei and Eridar had long been so thick that it could not be dissolved. Although the teachings of the Holy Light had always taught them to be benevolent and forgiving, this did not include the Eridar tribe that had persecuted them in the past. Of course, she would not be foolish enough to hate these 2 rare traitors of Eridar. On the contrary, she began to understand why Master Valen asked her to actively get close to Duque. Because only in Duque could she see the hope of defeating the Eridar tribe, and even the entire Burning Legion. Imriel's body and mind were trembling with excitement. There was an inexplicable desire in her heart. It was a desire to find a way to integrate into the Alliance, into Duque's circle no matter what. Everything in the hall fell into silence, and the originally tense atmosphere of battle seemed to have disappeared without a trace. In front of Duque, there were only two powerful female evil demons meekly and quietly crawling on the ground. Duque's eyes were wide open. There seemed to be a purplish-blue vortex spinning clockwise in his pupils. He smiled and pressed his hands on the Gemini's forehead. The next moment, everyone felt that some unknown law of power was deviating. Chapter 1526. The evil aura left Gemini in fear. It was as if a new power was rising from the magic net and descending. Its powerful energy was forcefully pouring into Gemini's delicate body, dominating everything, taking over everything. Gemini was indeed Gemini. Even the sound and rhythm of their screams were the same. Everyone saw a lot of black fluid that looked like beads of sweat appearing on the graceful curves of Saloras and Aura's bodies. Not only that, faint wails of the undead squeezed out from their pores. Over the millennia, they had died in the hands of the Gemini twins, leaving behind soul fragments in their bodies. These soul echoes were filled with sorrow and resentment. Just listening to them for a while was enough to make one's hair stand on end. What shocked everyone even more was the next scene. Large and small blue magic arrays appeared on Gemini's joints, wrists, elbows, shoulders, ankles, knees, and cervical vertebrae. The mysterious runes on these magic arrays flowed in an incomprehensible manner, as if they were chaotic and irregular. The light produced by the magic arrays made Gemini's entire body bend backwards. Theoretically, it was painful, but their faces were flushed with pain and excitement. Theon was the first to notice. At first, he thought it was an illusion, but as the magic runes flowed more and more intensely, not only him, but everyone else also saw that on the Gemini's chest, there was a flying claw connected to a pitch-black soul chain. The 5 sharp hooks on the flying claw emitted a demonic black light, and they were deeply hooked onto Gemini's heart. This discovery made Gemini's face turn green. What is this? Why didn't I know there was such a thing? The next second, when they saw Duque's confident smile, they inexplicably felt at ease. Mysterious and evil things were most terrifying when they didn't know what was going on, and knelt down inexplicably. After knowing it, it was usually the same thing. As expected, Duque's voice traveled into Gemini's ears. You should be glad that Kill Jaden is busy opening the portal, and doesn't have the time to deal with you too. This saved me a lot of effort. Duque's index fingers trembled slightly, and Gemini suddenly heard a sound that sounded like a piano being played from a low note to a high note. Ding ding ding. As the pitch grew louder, the soul chains began to crumble bit by bit. Each chain let out a shrill roar before quickly turning into nothingness. The 5 hooks on the claw seemed to have been stimulated by something. They opened abruptly and then collapsed. The twins let out a long sigh of relief, for their new lives, and for making the right decision. There was even a gust of blue arcane energy, gently wrapping around the damaged part of the soul that the hook had hooked out. In just a short 2 to 3 seconds, Gemini could already feel that the part had been perfectly repaired. Just as she was about to thank him, Gemini was shocked to find that the ball of energy had stopped moving. They immediately understood what Duque meant. Duque had never completely trusted them. This ball of energy was a guillotine hanging over their heads, constantly warning them that Kill Jaden could kill them in an instant, and so could Duque. However, Duque's behavior made them breathe a sigh of relief. Being on guard proved that Duque would still use them. Using them meant that they still had a chance to make contributions. They were not afraid of being on guard. They were afraid that after following Duque, they would be like an inconspicuous pebble on the side of the road, thrown aside and left to fend for themselves. This was what they were most afraid of. If Duque did not protect them, they were afraid that they would have to find a way to escape. Just as Nazul wanted to do at the beginning, they desperately escaped, trying to escape to a planet that had not been discovered by the army, hiding like a mouse, and struggling to survive. Duque used his supreme mysterious power to remove their shackles and add new ones. This made the Gemini feel as if they had been reborn. After the magic ceremony was completed, they bowed on the spot. "Please hurry up, Master. We are afraid that Kill Jaden will speed up the process of breaking into Azeroth." Ha ha ha. Duque laughed. He laughed extremely happily. Yes, you guessed right. He has indeed sped up. Under normal circumstances, he would have completely entered Azeroth by now. Everyone noticed the words "under normal circumstances" that Duque had said, and everyone smiled knowingly at the same time. Let's go. Let's see what the last big shot of the Burning Legion looks like now. At this time, Duque finally pulled out his Demon Slayer holy sword. With his staff in his left hand, and his sword in his right, he led everyone in the direction of the Sunwell. Glancing at the hesitant Eridar Gemini, Duque smiled. "Wait for our triumphant return at the gate of the Sunwell Highlands." The Gemini were overjoyed and bowed deeply. They were strong, but they hated fighting, feeling that it was a kind of trouble. Moreover, if they had just defected to Duque, they would immediately have to face their old master on the battlefield. They really could not guarantee that if Kill Jaden went all out to kill them, Duque would not lend a helping hand. Now that Duque had exempted them from participating in the battle, it was of course like an amnesty. The team began to move forward. The mages in the team noticed that every time the tail of Duque's staff touched the floor, there would be a circle of magic ripples that could not be sensed by anyone except Pharaoh. Just like the sonar used by the Alliance Navy, it relied on the feedback of the magic ripples to grasp everything in the Sunwell. After everyone passed through gorgeous corridors and majestic palaces that were already empty of enemies, they finally reached the tallest and largest palace on the edge of the Sunwell. The palace gate opened, and Kill Jaden's angry voice came from inside. The terrifying sound wave was so loud that at the same time as the sound came out, it raised a cloud of dust, like a shock wave jumping out of the gate. "Duque, Marcus." After slightly blocking the dust in front of them, not only Duque, but every member of the team laughed. Why? Because they all saw Kill Jaden, who only had half of his body stuck at the portal gate, not going up nor down. Pfft. At this moment, Queen Sylvanas was completely relieved. Before arriving here, she had almost always kept a straight face. What if Kill Jaden did not fall for it? What if most of Kill Jaden's body had already entered Azeroth? Layers of melancholy had always been entangled in her heart like a nightmare. At this moment, of course, the clouds had dispersed and the sun had risen. As the host, Queen Sylvanas laughed, and the group of unscrupulous fellows in the Alliance naturally followed suit. For a moment, these mortal experts who were looked down upon by Kill Jaden burst into laughter. Chapter 1527. Oh my god. I thought my waist was already thick enough. I didn't expect there to be someone even thicker. Magni first patted his bucket-like waist and complained. Hey, did this Burning Legion commander crawl out of the sewers and get stuck because he miscalculated his waist? Jaina spat out her venomous tongue mercilessly. Kill Jaden. You better lose some weight. It was rare for Queen Sylvie to be so free, so she also joined in to ridicule the eggs. You should pass your butt over first, then I can stomp it hard on your butt. Magni loyally fulfilled his role as the main tank to taunt. Hey, are you sure you can reach his butt? Mirrodin retorted. Brother, you're dirty. With one of the Alliance leaders taking the lead, the others of course would not let go of this opportunity to humiliate their mortal enemy. Instantly they started chattering. Only Imriel was stunned. She finally saw the ultimate demon king, who had persecuted and hunted the Draenei for 25,000 years. In fact, Kill Jaden's horrifying appearance was exactly the same as the one described by Professor Willen and the three-dimensional model stored in the Draenei archives. His body was as huge as a hill. Even though he only had half of his body, his huge body occupied more than half of the 100-meter diameter area in the middle of the hall. The only area left for mortals and Azeroth demigods to fight was a circular area less than 30 meters away from the pillars beside the hall. Kill Jaden's bright red skin was emitting magma-like heat all the time. Just a gentle flap of his pimpled bat wings could make a mortal feel a heat wave that was unbearable to mortals. His claws were huge. Just by looking at the size, it seemed like he could grab a medium-sized tank with one hand and use those sharp claws to crush everyone and everything inside. On his burly red shoulders were two extremely barbaric-style pauldrons. Four huge curved horns pointed towards the sky. At the top of the pauldrons, there was something that looked like a brazier, burning with eternal flames. It was so hot that it was suffocating. The two iron chains on the pauldrons formed an X shape, tied to a belt with a huge skull at the bottom. Together with the other skull decorations on his body, he looked evil and terrifying. Amidst the scorching heat wave, there were faint wails of the dead. The souls of the creatures of various races that he had killed still could not rest in peace in this purgatory. If without the strange golden halo that was stuck at Kill Jaden's waist, the experts of the Alliance would probably be in awe when they saw his upper body, as if they were facing a great enemy. Now, everything that Kill Jaden had become a paper tiger. This was a different kind of irony. Ever since he had struck a deal with Sargeras to expel the Dreenii into the Stellaris, Kill Jaden was convinced that no one could stop the power of the army. However, Sargeras had once made a promise of victory, and he had yet to fulfill it, which made him furious. However, none of his tricks could stop Duque from leading the Alliance, or even the entire Azeroth to rise. Therefore, he decided to personally take care of all the ants, including Duque. However, he did not expect that all his tricks could not stop the powerhouses from coming at the most critical moment. What's more, he did not expect the biggest flaw to be beside him. It was the Eridar Gemini, whom he had once regarded as trash, and was prepared to be used as cannon fodder. Faced with the enemy's trap and the mockery of the mortals, Kill Jaden was naturally angry, furious, and resentful. He could not wait to blow up Azeroth at the first moment. However, when all his emotions rose to the boiling point, Kill Jaden calmed down instead. His body was emitting heat that could melt stones and pillars, but his laughter was filled with coldness. No matter how the experts of the Alliance continued to mock him, Kill Jaden was not in a hurry. He did not make any moves either. He just stared at Duque and laughed coldly. That laughter made one's hair stand on end. If one did not have any skills, they might foolishly ask, "What are you laughing at?" That would be inferior in terms of aura, because it meant that one did not see through the other party's trump card. Ha 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 ha. Duque laughed too. Isn't it just a cold fake sneering and pretending to laugh? I can do it too. At some point, only the laughter of Duque and Kill Jaden echoed in the entire hall. In the past thousands of years after the Well of the Sun was built, the King of the Sunstriders would lead all the High Elven nobles here to hold a grand banquet every major festival of Kuel Salis. The circular hall with a diameter of more than 200 meters was supported by 36 marble pillars that seemed to have long reached the clouds. The entire vault above was painted with an unparalleled vault mural, which depicted the glorious history of the High Elves since their establishment for thousands of years. Of course, the focus was on praising the great Sunstrider royal family. However, none of the members of the Sunstrider royal family participated in the final battle that was about to happen and would determine the future fate of Azeroth. This was quite ironic. Duque laughed impudently and comfortably, because he firmly believed that he had conquered the goddess of fate. Since even the goddess of fate was on his side, there was nothing to be afraid of. Therefore, not only was Duque laughing, but his eyes also had the penetrating feeling of seeing through the past and the future, as well as all the mysteries of the world. Eggs. Do you know how many times I farmed you? Do you know that I can count your skills by listening to the sound effects with my eyes closed? Do you know that later, even the gold group of the barbarians could farm you until your pants fell off? Don't let me be too disappointed or you'll die. It was clearly Kill Jaden who laughed first, but anyone could tell that Egg's laughter was becoming more and more fake and less confident. Finally, Kill Jaden was the first to stop laughing. Duke Marcus, I admit that I underestimated you. Not just me, but the entire army underestimated you. You may have made a great name for yourself in this world, but today will be the end of your legend. Everything will end. With that, Kil'jaeden slowly raised his hands, and his claws, palms facing the sky, shook lightly as if he was playing a piano. Suddenly, a portal opened in all four directions of Kil'jaeden at the same time. Huh. Duque raised his chin slightly. He had already smelled that the gears of history had begun to shift. The size of these portals was much larger than the ones in history. Indeed, in the next moment, the Eridar warlocks that were supposed to be teleported out were the Lords of the Abyss. Accompanied by footsteps that were even more shocking than the galloping of horses, these terrifying monsters, that were supposed to be the vanguard of the army, brandished their huge blades and charged towards the alliance of heroes. Let us handle them. Magni was the first to take the lead. Chapter 1528. Even after activating God's descent, Magni's body size was still the size of an adult and a child compared to an abyssal lord. The double-edged greatsword, that was as large as a pillar, collided with the small fire devil's hammer. The fire demon hammer, which was supposed to be smaller, should have been crushed, but the reality was that the dwarf king's unreasonable strength had forced the Void Lord of the Abyss, which was at the level of a Void Lord, to take 3 big steps back. Immediately after that, Master Hal unreasonably leaped high into the air. With a swing of his axe, he instantly killed the Lord of the Abyss, who had used up his old strength, and had yet to recover his strength. There was another abyssal lord that was being held off by Muradin Bronzebeard. On the other side, Theon was fighting an abyssal lord with Ashbringer, while the human heroes led by Varian were attacking the other 2 lords. Initially, the Alliance heroes seemed to have the upper hand, but after the second batch of Lord Demons came through the Void Portal, their combat power suddenly became a little tight. The Courage Twin Emperors were the first to look bad. Of course, they knew that most of these Alliance heroes were the leaders of various countries. If any one of them died, Duque would probably be furious. However, in the Battle of the New Quicksand, even the middle-level leaders of the Courage Empire had knelt down, so they could only come out to fight. The Sword Emperor waved his sword without hesitation, and the Demon Emperor continuously cast magic to support him. Kil'jaeden sneered. Suddenly, the 4 portals opened to 8. The guys that came out were still not too strong, only beginner Void Lords, but there were too many of them. There were now more than 10 Void Lords on the scene at the same time. Didn't you steal the control of the sun well, and use spatial magic to block me? Continue. Kil'jaeden looked at Duque casually. Duque and Kil'jaeden looked at each other and sneered. Do you think I have to do it myself if you send some trash? Although he said that, countless spatial spells and 3-dimensional geometric figures poured down from above on his retina. That's right. Duque had indeed blocked Kil'jaeden's waste using the secret plan that he had set up in the sun well. However, Kil'jaeden was not the kind of trash who would sit back and wait for death. As he spoke, he was also thinking of ways to continue to expand the spatial rift. Even if he couldn't expand the portal that was stuck, he could expand other rifts to allow more demon lords to enter Azeroth and force Duque to let go. At this time, Vashti was ready to go on stage. Suddenly, Duque gently waved his hand and stopped her. Duque snapped his fingers. Bang! 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 Suddenly, the 36 huge marble pillars exploded at the same time. The roof of the huge palace, which covered a diameter of 200 meters, suddenly split open like a chrysanthemum in full bloom. Pieces of the triangular roof of the palace slid out and fell outside with a loud rumbling sound. When the magnificent ceiling of the palace was dismantled along with the rather historical mural, a pitch-black and deep sky was revealed. Unknowingly, it was already night. Stars twinkled in the sky. In the next moment, Kil'jaeden's face turned a little green. Beside Duque, Tyron stood gracefully and slowly raised her fair arms, that had a light purple tint to them like jade. Starfall. A meteor shower fell from the night sky. The meteorite fragments that fell from the void battlefield immediately affected the small battlefield in the sun well. Even Kil'jaeden could not help but raise his huge head to look at these uninvited guests who had suddenly barged into the sky. The fragments of the stars first flashed in the void, like the lights of civilization in the night. Every time the silver light flashed, a fragment of the stars would seem to jump through space, crossing space from the far end of the universe to the sky above the sun well. A vast expanse of specks of light appeared in the sky. Each speck of light represented a terrifying power that could destroy the heavens and the earth. The battlefield in the Sunwell Palace was silent for a moment. Countless rays of silver light extended from the flashes in the air. These dazzling lights pulled out rays that were thicker than pillars and smashed towards the Void Lords one by one. Regardless of whether they were the Abyss Lords with their huge bodies and powerful defense, the mysterious and cunning Shavala, or the famous Dreadlord, none of them could dodge these terrifying attacks that surpassed the realm of gods. The light of the starfall engulfed every demon lord present, but did not touch any mortal heroes. The result was immediately revealed. Under the power of the starfall, the demon lords that should have extremely high resistance to magic and physical attacks were torn apart. They did not even have the time to let out their last wail before they died. Even though all the lords were dead and their corpses were completely shattered, the light of the stars did not disappear. Under Tyron's guidance, they were like cheetahs looking for their prey, quickly flying towards their final target. One after another, the falling stars bombarded the teleportation door that Kill Jaden had opened without stopping. Far away in the void distortion, the Eridar mages who were responsible for stabilizing the teleportation door all vomited blood. They could no longer control it, and could only let the large teleportation door collapse before their eyes. This time, Kill Jaden was clearly at a disadvantage. Unable to hold it in any longer, Kill Jaden made his move. His first move was an extremely exaggerated multicast. Whoa! It was like the wail of a soul from the deepest depths of hell. It was the lingering sound of death and ashes left behind by the army's iron hooves. It would have been fine if Kill Jaden had used some soul whip at the start, but no one expected the egg to go all out and use Darkness of 1,000 Souls. Originally, it was the night sky around them, illuminated by the brilliant lights in the palace. Now, everyone felt that the entire world had suddenly turned dark. Everything in his field of vision instantly turned a dull gray color. It was a terrifying color that was depressing to the point of being oppressive. It was more like Kill Jaden was venting his anger. Duque took a deep breath. He knew that he could not panic. Khadgar, I'll leave the spatial shackles to you, Duque ordered calmly in the spiritual world. Leave it to me. Khadgar bowed, and immediately took over the control of the spatial shackles. Duque clasped his hands together, and glanced in the direction he had come from. After silently cursing Kalegos for being a bastard, he had no choice but to do it himself. Originally, Kalegos would provide the Blue Dragon Pearl, which could summon 2 young blue dragons to protect the mortals, and provide all sorts of benefits. It was obvious that Kalegos had wasted time with Madagosa, or perhaps he had used a big move at the beginning of the egg, which was beyond his expectations. In any case, he was not here, so Duque could only rely on himself. Faced with the egg's ultimate move that could instantly kill people, Duque shouted, "Be careful of the darkness of 1,000 souls. Gather everyone into the barrier." With that, Duque used his divine power to raise 4 hemispherical arcane barriers that were at least 10 meters in diameter. Chapter 1529. In this life, there were finally Azeroth people who faced the terrifying impact of Kill Jaden's sea of shadow energy. At that moment the power of darkness and undead became thousands of times more active, and countless vengeful spirits appeared in the air. The evil spirit tide instantly took shape, and came from all directions, swarming towards Kill Jaden who had summoned them. They didn't know that they would become nourishment for Kill Jaden's big move, but they instinctively obeyed the call from the spiritual world, as if subjects responding to the call of their king, and sacrificing everything for it. On the outskirts of the Sunwell Highlands, many ordinary Alliance soldiers suffered. The most ridiculous ones were directly transformed into monsters by the distorted shadow magic. Their human souls were instantly obliterated, and all that was left was a boundless hatred for the living and the holy light. This caused chaos in the Alliance's frontline army, However, the Shadowblade elves who were defending around the Sunwell Highlands were even more affected. Countless defenseless half-elves and half-demons were like moths attracted to a flame, and they were immediately eroded by the unhindered influx of shadow magic. This was a very cold joke. If there were too many moths and the flame was too weak, it would really extinguish the flame. These half-baked demons couldn't withstand the soul power that was hundreds of times more than what they could bear. A black flame ignited all over their bodies, and they turned into ashes amidst their screams and wails. Then, their souls were sucked away by Kil'jaeden. These mage elves tried to obtain power and status, but they were treated as nourishment, mercilessly harvested and absorbed. It had to be said that this was quite ironic. Their fate was even more miserable than the high elves who surrendered to Sargeras 10,000 years ago. Of course, no one would pity them. At this moment, there were scenes of buildings collapsing and lives disappearing everywhere. Even Duque's magic net began to be eroded and rebuilt. It looked like the curtain call of an era. Dark shadows swept across the entire Isle of Quel'Danas, and the shadow magic that spread from Kil'jaeden had the momentum to erode the entire island, and even the whole world. Originally, he just wanted to withstand this move like in history, and slowly consume Kil'jaeden. At this moment, Duque was a little angry. It seems that I've been completely underestimated by you. Do you really think that I didn't do anything after becoming a demigod? Duque gently raised his hand, looking down from the sky. The soul ocean created by thousand soul darkness looked like a wave of darkness. But in the blink of an eye, arcane energy lines suddenly appeared in the sky above the Sunwell Highlands. These energy lines extended from the nodes of the weave in the void, forming new energy nodes where they intersected. Then, countless beams of light descended from the nodes and poured into the black waves. A bright flame ignited in an instant. It was like a huge ring of fire, preventing the tide of darkness from spreading in all directions, and preventing more vengeful souls from stepping into the highlands of the Well of the Sun. In fact, it also prohibited the possibility of Kil'jaeden borrowing power from the outside world. Duque waved his hand. Come, since you think that you can defeat me, Elun, and Azeroth on our home ground with your own strength, then you will be able to defeat me. In that case, don't even think about absorbing energy from the Azeroth. If you can defeat us with your own strength, then we'll consider it our loss. Duque shamelessly made the announcement. Who was the shameless one who blocked the egg, so that only half of its body could enter? If you have the ability, let the egg descend in its full form, and then fight to your heart's content. Kil'jaeden couldn't hold it in anymore, and directly smashed a dark light ball over. A huge amount of shadow energy beyond the imagination of mortals gathered into a small beam of light. When it blasted out of Kil'jaeden's right claw, the Alliance's powerhouses even thought that the egg had stabbed out with a sword, not an explosion. The opponent was changing, and so was Duque. Everyone suddenly realized that the energy shield covering everyone's heads had more frost elements than arcane spells, and the area in front of them had turned into a sharp cone with dozens of edges. It was a sharp impact sound. Mortals were completely helpless in the face of this shocking extraordinary power. Even a bold dwarf king like Magni Bronzebeard could only futilely take out a large shield in front of him. This action was more like a habit, a form of formality. If even Duque's shield couldn't withstand Kil'jaeden's ultimate move, then all he could do was die before his comrades died. Heaven to the left, and the warriors to the right. As a tank who attracted the vitality of the team, and obtained the divine artifact that countless damage output professions dreamed of, it was even more of a responsibility to stand at the front of the team. At this moment, Magni was prepared to die first if he couldn't do it. However, a familiar hand rested on his shoulder. Relax, when have I ever let you down? Hearing Duque's words, Magni suddenly felt less nervous. A moment ago, he was as hard as a rock, but he lacked tension and tenacity. If an enemy stronger than him attacked, he would definitely collapse. Magni felt inexplicably at ease, but also a little ashamed. I still rely too much on Duque. Suddenly, Magni had a faint desire in his heart. If only I was a demigod too. Of course, Duque didn't know that his words of comfort had unintentionally accelerated the growth of this dwarf hero, who had also become a demigod in the original history, and unintentionally changed history. All of Duque's attention was focused on the battle with Kil'jaeden. The lingering evil spirits began to disappear from the palace in the Sun Well, as the darkness of 1,000 souls was used up. Kil'jaeden's multicasting had just begun. From his right claw, a dazzling cluster of lightning was forming. When the sky and earth darkened just now, what gathered was not only the negative energy of the vengeful spirits, but also the fiercest lightning in the world. Legion lightning. It could be said that the chain lightning that the bull-headed shaman was using now were all inferior versions of Legion lightning. As early as 30,000 years ago, the Eridar warlocks had already reached the peak of the use of elements. Almost as soon as Duque's elemental shield disappeared after it clashed with the darkness of 1,000 souls, Legion lightning arrived. A powerful electric current that could vaporize an entire palace hit Magni's chest, charring it instantly. Magni suddenly remembered what his father had taught him back then. That was the face of a cold master teaching a foolish disciple. Magic immunity? There has never been true magic immunity in the world. All magic immunity only applies to enemies of the same level or lower. Remember, a low-level mystery will definitely be destroyed by a higher-level mystery. He didn't know this before, but now he deeply experienced it. Chapter 1530. That was the difference between heaven and earth. That was the difference between a mortal and a divine realm. For some reason at this moment, Magni thought of the lightning rod, and the earth that absorbed all the lightning. Lightning rod. Another miracle-level precious knowledge that Duque had taught the dwarves after his invention. Almost all the flying warship factories on the high mountains had lightning rods that could protect them from lightning strikes. Although the lightning in the sky had allowed the dwarves of the Eagle Nest Mountain to practice, Thunderhammer, Kil'jaeden's Lightning Legion, gave Magni a different experience. Magni was clearly focused on defense, but that feeling as if he had caught onto something attracted Duque's attention. Duque was startled, and then he smiled and curled his lips. Vashj immediately understood. As a maid and a Naga who had been learning to read people's minds for the past 10,000 years, Vashj was far ahead of Duque's harem in terms of understanding other people's thoughts. With a signal from Duque, she made her move. One of the palms flipped, and the Lightning Legion, that was supposed to jump to the next person and continue to deal damage to the Alliance's Beyonders, suddenly became tamed because of Vashj's sudden attack. The lightning that contained strong natural elements became a harmless earthworm in Vashj's palm. Vashj not only subdued this lightning, but also personally demonstrated how to use the elements around her to remove the energy that was not under her control. This time, it was Magni's turn to be startled. Then he smiled brightly. He knew that Duque was not stingy in showing his old friend how to cross the boundary of the divine realm. After playing with the lightning, Vashj threw the lightning snake out again, blasting it into Kil'jaeden's newly opened teleportation portal. The space in the Sunwell had long become unstable after the continuous work of Kil'jaeden and the demons. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was riddled with holes. It was a little difficult to suddenly open a large teleportation portal that could allow Void Lords to enter, but they could open as many small and medium-sized teleportation portals as they wanted. Flame Stinger. With just a thought from Kil'jaeden, in the void, a highly concentrated flame gathered together at a high speed that was difficult to be seen by the naked eye, then turned into the shape of a spear, and fiercely stabbed towards Duque. Duque waved the staff in his left hand, and an ice blade as smooth as a mirror suddenly appeared out of thin air, slashing towards the flaming spike. From the perspective of the Demon King Vek on the right of Duque, the ice blade just happened to be balanced with his field of vision. The flat and thin blade seemed to have become a thin thread. This thread seemed to have easily cut off Kil'jaeden's flame thorn, and then the ice blade was blown into pieces by the fire elements that broke through the air, scattering in the air. It was a beautiful scene. Behind the seemingly simple confrontation was the extraordinary control of the elements of the two peerless masters. There were no tricks to speak of, only absolute control. As long as one side was slightly weaker, they would be killed by the continuous magic attacks. Pfft! Kill Jaden spat on the ground, his anger growing. In terms of elemental manipulation, he was of course superior to Duque. It was just that Duque's technique was not as good as his. And once he couldn't handle it, he would use force to break through, using the energy of the weave to force his way through. This was not the most infuriating thing. In just a few rounds of fighting, Kill Jaden suddenly discovered that Duque could imitate, study, and absorb his elemental manipulation techniques. What the hell? He could even learn and apply it. Unfortunately, half of his strength was forcefully blocked, and he could not use it. This was like an idiot forcefully dragging him to the same level of intelligence as the idiot, and then using his exquisite combo to beat him up with incomparable familiarity. There was no need to mention how sullen it was. Kill Jaden suddenly regretted throwing his first Darkness of 1,000 Souls too early. If he had more time to accumulate power and collect vengeful souls, the power of Darkness of 1,000 Souls would be even greater and more terrifying. However, don't think that you can let your guard down just because Kill Jaden had those skills. Immediately, Kill Jaden returned the favor to Duque. In the next 30 seconds, Vashj and the Karaj twin emperors destroyed the portal, while Kill Jaden threw small skills such as Flame Spike, Flame Flower, and Shadow Stinger to contend with Duque, while fiercely resisting the operation of the spatial shackles. Just when Duque thought that everything was as it was in history, an unforeseen event suddenly occurred. A large portal the size of half of Kill Jaden's body opened behind him without any warning. It was not that Duque did not want to stop it, but Kill Jaden suddenly spread the huge bat wings on his back, and forcibly took Duque's holy light flame burst full of holy light, covering the opening of the portal. 3 seconds later, a 6-armed Shivala appeared, wielding 6 evil weapons that emanated a strong, ominous light. Duque's eyes immediately narrowed, because the system had already notified him. Doomsayer Darien has entered the battlefield. Darien was one of the most evil and warlike warriors in the Burning Legion. In the original history, she should have been captured and imprisoned by the Nara long ago. So why did she appear here? And now was not the time for her to appear in history. Duque snorted coldly. Suddenly, a huge arcane hand appeared in the void, fiercely grabbing the portal that Darien had come out from and destroying it. Kill Jaden did not think much of it, and instead, a cruel smile appeared on his face. Duque knew this swindler's new idea. With only half of his strength to fight with Duque, Kill Jaden would eventually be exhausted to death. After all, he could not be like Duque, constantly replenishing the magic power sent into the magic net from all over Azeroth. But it was unrealistic for Duque to rely on Khadgar alone to lock down the entire space. Khadgar's abilities were not bad, and it had already taken a lot of effort for him to lock down Kill Jaden's waist. Spatial strangulation, blockades, and breakthroughs were happening all the time. This was like a long and drawn-out hacker war. Both sides used different methods to attack and defend against each other's attacks. Some were passive, some were active. If Khadgar had to lock down Kill Jaden, while also taking care of the other large portals, it would be too much. Kill Jaden was also forcing Duque to divert some of his attention to suppress his large portals. Otherwise, he would have to continuously send in high-level Void Dukes and suppress Duque's side in terms of the number and quality of his subordinates. At this moment Darien, who had just come out, was fighting with the Sword Emperor. In a short period of time, the Sword Emperor would not be able to free up his hands. The bad news was that the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th high-level portals were also forming. Duque's expression froze. What the heck, this is a competition. Chapter 1531. This time, even Duque could not stay idle. He held a tiche in his left hand and blocked in the void. If someone could look beyond the surface and see the space domain that mortals couldn't see with their naked eyes, they would be able to clearly see that a huge cover had forcibly smashed several sections of the space tunnel that had suddenly pierced through the endless void. As a native demigod, you have some skills. This time, it was Kill Jaden's turn to be smug. What about this? In the void, 12 new spatial passageways suddenly appeared. They forcefully crashed into the space of Azeroth in a domineering manner. Duque's expression finally changed. Ordinary spatial tunnels were first about stability and safety. After all, if the spatial tunnel was not good, the one who was teleported would be the one to suffer. On the other hand, if safety was not taken into account, then the construction of the spatial tunnel could be even more sloppy. No, it was already to the point of simple violence. The tunnel was open, but the lords had to jump in. Whoever did not jump, Grandpa Egg would kill them later. In any case, if they died, it would be considered a work injury. When others played with spatial teleportation, they at most used quality to suppress others. The Burning Legion's teleportation was F*King suppressing others with quantity. As long as their souls were not destroyed, demons could be resurrected in the distorted void no matter how they died. Moreover, no one knew just how many void overlords there were in the distorted void at the moment. 10,000 years ago, there were more than 1,000. 10,000 years later, because of Kill Jaden's strict secrecy, even the Eridar twins could not say how many powerful lords there were in the Legion. Since ancient times, the defensive side had always been passive. When Duque was not careful, a teleportation gate arrived first. In less than a second, it broke through Duque's void defense line and opened the teleportation gate into the Sunwell. F*CK. Duque could not help but curse. King Galaxis. Another boss with a name. Anyone who could leave a name in the Legion was rarely a weakling. That guy should have been the second leader of a trial team called the Crusaders in Nascent's history. Unexpectedly, he had come out now. Succumb to the flames of the army, King Galaxis roared as soon as he appeared, shaking the mortals to the core. The raging green demonic flames began to spread in half of the hall. As an Eridar Warlock rank expert, Galaxis could definitely be classified as a high-rank Void Lord. In a way, he was like a weaker version of Archimonde. If Duque gathered all the experts to suppress him, it would be no different from chopping vegetables. But with Kill Jaden, the great demon god here, it was undoubtedly a heavy burden. The Nephilim Emperor Vek Lore immediately went up to meet him, and a blizzard came crashing down on him. He had thought that the duel between an Eridar Warlock and a magic-type demigod would be another elemental battle. The result made everyone's jaws drop. Vek Lore actually grabbed Galaxis by the waist like a wrestler, and then the two giants directly smashed through the wall of the hall and fell far away. They kept rolling until they reached the open space outside the hall, where the two giants really began to compete in magic. In fact, more than one person realized that the hall, which originally had a diameter of more than 200 meters, looked very big. As a battlefield for a group of huge giants, it was still not enough to look at. Originally, the dome had already been blown away by Duque, and now the twin emperors and their opponents had smashed through several walls and nearly 10 marble pillars. Finally, this glorious palace that had been built for thousands of years and could definitely be classified as a cultural relic collapsed. However, no one in the hall would feel pity for this. No one had the spare time to care about this. The next moment, the third high-rank Void Lord entered the field. Dreadlord Casranator. It was not that Casranator was strong. Under normal circumstances, he certainly could not compare to the original leader of the Dreadlords, Tichondrius. But when this guy appeared in the original history, Azeroth's anti-Titan formation was already full of holes, so he could appear in a more complete form. Now it was a little similar to this situation. As soon as Casranator appeared, Vashj had no choice but to go up to him. At this time, the scene was already very chaotic. Nearby was Kill Jaden's unceasing magic bombardment. All kinds of fire and shadow magic of great lethality were simply flying everywhere. And if a mortal was not careful, they would kneel. In the middle circle, small and medium-sized teleportation doors kept opening, and all kinds of elite demons surged out like a tide. At the periphery, there were now 3 demigods being held back by 3 high-rank Void Lords, and the outcome could not be determined for a while. Kill Jaden used such a tactic that was completely different from Archimonde's to force the Alliance's side into a dead end. Archimonde was a fearless warrior. No matter when or where, he would always be alone and facing the enemy's army. Kil'jaeden was the other extreme. He used his army to make his enemies fall into a tight encirclement and despair. And in the end, it ended with a grievance. At this moment, Kil'jaeden looked more like a summoner. The fourth Void Lord appeared. This time, Duque could be considered to have learned his lesson. In the void, he stubbornly intercepted the thickest teleportation channel, and would rather let the small and medium-sized channels pass, leaving at least a quarter of his strength. Thus, only a nameless Void Lord came over. This time, it was the nature giant Thaddeus who suddenly jumped out of the weave. As Duque's elemental emissary, he had long since retrieved his human form. However, he knew very well that what truly allowed him to control lightning and unleash his ultimate combat strength was still that twisted and terrifying giant's body. So he appeared in front of everyone in the form of a giant. As soon as he came out, he fiercely wrestled with that Void Lord. At this moment, Kil'jaeden finally laughed out loud. Ha 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 ha. Stupid human. Foolish indigenous demigod. Do you really think that after you trapped my body, I didn't do anything and was just struggling here in vain? Ha ha ha. Along with the egg's laughter, the surrounding areas that were tightly sealed by the space barrier suddenly opened up. Instinctively, Duque sensed that what was operating there were actually high-grade teleportation spell formations that even the Eridar Gemini had not mentioned before. Eridar mages were chanting incantations beside the spell formations. Countless elite demons surrounded the spell formations, staring coldly at the ruins of the hall where the Alliance's heroes were. Outside the Sunwell, the Eridar Gemini, who had been waiting for news in stealth mode, suddenly stood up. Two extremely similar faces showed the same fear. Not long after, the 5th, 8th, and 10th Demon Lord appeared. Chapter 1532. Battles were raging all over the Isle of Quel'Danas, but none of them could compare to the Sunwell Highlands. It was as if the place was suffering from the most violent earthquake, and the huge and glorious buildings were shaking nonstop. Bang! As if struck by a violent gust of air, the towering tower suddenly shook and then collapsed. The earth was shaking nonstop, and the palaces that were built by countless generations of high elven craftsmen over thousands of years, and were works of art kept creaking, as if they were under unimaginable pressure. Every wall with gorgeous paintings, the marble floors that had been polished by hands for countless years, to become extremely smooth, and the doors and windows that were carved with complicated patterns were all trembling, as if they were going to fall apart at any time. A distant howl that seemed to have come from ancient times could be heard. Then, above the ruins of the highlands, two huge and elegant blue creatures spread their wings and flew past at high speed. The icy breath blew past, and the rubble and dust that had been scattered due to the collapse of the towers all turned into larger pieces of ice. It was as if a blizzard had been summoned by a mage. A humanoid creature with a pair of fiery red wings shot into the sky like a sharp arrow, heading straight for the blue dragon. The ones fighting in the sky were naturally the Demon Lord duo of Calegos and Matagorsa. They were engaged in an intense battle in the limited airspace within the sealed space barrier. On the ground, Duque's elemental emissaries and the powerhouses of the Alliance were fighting against the Demon Lords. Almost the entire Sunwell Highlands was in a state of intense fighting. The dread guard Lord Scarless Ammer was a 3-story tall behemoth. He used his black and gold-rimmed pauldrons to hit the palaces hard, causing a storm of rubble. Valera jumped to his waist with incredible agility and gave him a hard blow. But she couldn't deal a fatal blow. Very quickly, William executed a beautiful intercept. Under the effect of fury, his entire body turned into a stream of light, and he struck the same wound with the two divine swords that he had fused together. Ammer's random attacks still caused all the nearby buildings to collapse. Hal could no longer remember how many abyssal lords he had killed. In any case, the rows of houses were as fragile as castles made of sand on the beach in front of this type of charging leader. Regardless of whether they were old or new, all the buildings were uprooted by the violent impact. Even the walls and roofs that had been reinforced with magic crumbled under the violent impact of the dark energy. It turned into countless fragments, like pieces of paper flying in the wind. The experts of the Alliance worked hard. The two blue dragons who came to work were also very hardworking. Duque's direct subordinates were even more so. Just how many Lord-class demons had he killed? After counting to about 20, no one cared about this matter anymore. Because there were more and more demon overlords, the experts on the Alliance's side were almost too busy. It was like the pressure was constantly accumulating in a snowball manner. It all depended on when it would truly become the straw that broke the camel's back. In the ruins of the hall, Duque was still fighting with Kil'jaeden. Light and shadow intertwined, and explosions rumbled. The highest level of magic collided in midair. The ruins of the hall, and even the entire night sky directly above, kept flashing with the light of the lines of law. Seeing that his side had gained an overwhelming advantage, Kil'jaeden began to toughen up. Ha! Duke Marcus, for a mortal to ascend to godhood, you're already very good. Your fate has been marked by the Grim Reaper. Maybe you can successfully shake it off this time, and buy some time. But you'll soon be caught up again. In the ancient war, a few years ago, you had shaken off the death curse of fate twice. But I won't give you the chance to see it a third time. Give up. Your last struggle is meaningless. True victory and eternal life belong only to the Burning Legion. At this point, Kil'jaeden suddenly raised his hand, and dozens of shadow lines suddenly appeared in the void. They directly bypassed Duque's elemental defense, and Soul Whip was used on the experts of the Alliance. Even someone as strong as Magni Brawnbeard could not help but let out a painful groan. Not to mention the others. Unexpectedly, the egg's tone changed, and his arrogant voice became extremely tempting. But Duke Marcus, it's not just me. Even Archimonde and Sargeras admire you very much. As long as you're willing to join the Legion, you can become the third commander alongside me and Archimonde. After taking what the Legion wants, we can even give up on destroying Azeroth, and allow you to keep this planet as your exclusive property. Hiss! Every expert of the Alliance couldn't help but gasp when they heard this. The commander of the Burning Legion, that was the invincible commander, who had swept through the entire universe in the past 25,000 years. No intelligent race, planet, or even galaxy could fight against the Devil Legion, that had units of hundreds of millions. Hundreds of thousands of galaxies had been burned to ashes. Billions of lives had been plunged into misery and suffering. Even after killing Sargeras and Archimonde, no one dared to guarantee that these two powerhouses were really dead. Or perhaps there was a part of their souls left somewhere in the twisted nether, and they could rely on those souls to resurrect or something. Now Kil'jaeden was actually willing to offer such a high price tag for Duque. This could be considered a heavy investment. For a moment, Iroh the Hoof was taken aback. If Duque, the core of the Alliance, decided to join the Burning Legion, it would be too terrifying. The planet's protection circle that Azeroth was so proud of would immediately be destroyed from the inside, and the Legion would descend. Then, whether the Draenei could continue to escape was unknown. But before Iroh could finish thinking, he suddenly heard Duque's crisp voice. I refuse. Why refuse? Protecting this small planet was meaningless to those who pursued power. The army could bestow them with greater and stronger power. If you want, you can easily make thousands of planets bow to your feet. Kil'jaeden was still unwilling to give up. His voice shook the hearts of every Alliance member. Master of all worlds. This kind of power, this kind of temptation was simply irresistible to men. Could Duque refuse? Everyone was thinking if it was them, would they refuse? Would they? But it would be difficult to make the decision to refuse, right? Beside Duque, countless magic circles suddenly opened, and countless elemental energy formed on their own, shooting towards Kil'jaeden like lightning. Duque, who was in the middle of the energy wave, looked calm. Chapter 1533. His gaze seemed to have transcended time and space, and he saw the past. It was the grand occasion when countless races united to resist the Burning Legion in the ancient war. It was the oath that the dragon race had sworn to protect the world for 25,000 years. It was the continuation of the civilization of thousands of intelligent races on this planet. It was Duque spoke softly. As long as I have enough power, that's enough. I don't need the strongest power in the universe. Perhaps this planet is a power desert in the eyes of the army, but I'm already used to this world. I coexist with this magical land that is filled with danger, and protect the living beings that live here. I see the advancement of technology and civilization on this land as my own glory. I don't care how many living beings bow down to my feet, and I don't care about any ideal world. I only love my lover, my friends, my comrades in arms, and the people who raised them and live in this world. I wasn't born for this, but I'm willing to die for it. This is the commandment that I, the demigod of Azeroth, have set for myself. All of a sudden, every expert from the Alliance felt touched. The situation of the battle had already become difficult. However, even the most legendary mortal ascended god in Azeroth loved this world so much and never gave up. What was there for him to talk about tiredness? What was there to think about giving up? Thump, thump. Their heartbeats were so intense that they could hear them clearly even in the midst of a fierce battle. Duque, I love you. Sylvanas was the first to shout. The bold Queen Sylvanas shouted her declaration in the hottest way possible. In the name of Elun, as long as you don't leave, I won't abandon you. Tyron gave up on being reserved and shouted. Then Gianna, Alicia and Korea made their vows. After the queens made their declarations, the atmosphere suddenly changed. First of all, it was Magni who shouted, for the Alliance. Then William shouted, for Azeroth. In an instant, everyone was excited. Duque's slightly pursed lips relaxed. Thank you, Kil'jaeden. You have united our chaotic wills. However, do you really think you can defeat us with summoning spells? Duque's words shocked Kil'jaeden. Duque raised his hands to the sky, palms facing up. His palms glowed with a mysterious light. In just half a second, as if right above the edge of the sky, a beam of dazzling light shot out from the dragon fortress in the middle of the void battlefield, pointing directly at the Isle of Quel'Danas below. Kil'jaeden was shocked when a huge 5-colored rune appeared 2 kilometers above the island. Titan, Titan. With this mysterious rune from the Pantheon Temple as the center, halos appeared one after another. Red, yellow, blue, green, black. From the outside to the inside, there were 5 colors. Every time the 5 colors cycled, it would repeat over and over again. It was unknown how many hundreds and thousands of cycles it had cycled. Every time a ring expanded outwards, countless magic runes would automatically form within the ring, forming a complete magic circle. These slowly connected magic circles were so complicated that they were completely beyond the limits of what a person's dynamic vision could observe. However, when these connected rings of magic circles spread out one after another and covered the entire sky above the Isle of Quel'Danas, from the sky to the horizon and the sea, the demons that were enveloped by this formation were already in a state of chaos. This was because this magic circle was used by the titans of the Pantheon to deal with the demons from the distorted void when they transformed the universe. That was simply a natural counterforce, causing the demons under this giant compound magic circle to perish one after another. The weaker ordinary demons directly melted under the light of the magic circle. Even the power of a lord-level demon was directly halved in this magic circle. Are you big lizards crazy? This is equivalent to removing the power of the protective magic circle to deal with me. Kil'jaeden screamed. At the highest point in the sky, Alexstras's hearty laughter came. Ha ha ha. You didn't expect it, did you? Anyway, Sargeras is still sinking in the bottomless abyss, and Archimonde has just died. You're the only one in the Burning Legion who can truly threaten this planet. As long as we take care of you, even if 10,000 lords come in, we can slowly deal with them one by one. This was a typical case of catching the big and letting go of the small. When Kil'jaeden descended, outer space had also sent tens of millions of demons to harass him. The 5-colored guardian dragon's actions were equivalent to drawing away most of the energy of the protective magic circle. The direct consequence was that even if the dragons tried their best to intercept them, there might still be hundreds of thousands of demons breaking through the magic circle and successfully descending. Of course, in the eyes of the dragons, as long as they could cripple Kil'jaeden, it was worth it. Obviously, such a big thing as changing the planet's protective magic circle was definitely not something that could be done in a short period of time. The dragons know it must be Duque. He had been planning this for an unknown period of time. Duque Marcus. Kil'jaeden roared angrily again. The second darkness of 1,000 souls also began to take shape in his hand. Duque, on the other hand, did not even have the desire to look at Kil'jaeden. He closed his eyes and breathed softly, incomparably slow. One breath. One breath. After achieving the body of an elemental demigod, breathing and heartbeat were no longer necessary. Duque still kept this habit because it made him feel more like a human and not some kind of existence that had nothing to do with humans. What entered his lungs was cold air. In a trance, it was the biting cold aura from Northrend. Before it was cooled down by the northern continent, it came from Kalimdor on the other side of the sea. Before that, it came from the southern continent of Pandaria, which had yet to open a sea route. And before that, it came from the eastern continent where he was now. This was the cycle of the monsoon, across a long journey, across the ever-changing endless sea. Duque saw all this with his own eyes through the magic net. Relying on the magic net that connected more than half of Azeroth, he was like a true god, his gaze piercing through the mountains and the sea, the sky and the earth. Everything in Azeroth. It was all in Duque's eyes. One breath, one breath. Slowly, it responded to the pulsation of the planet. On the entire Isle of Quel'Danas, everything suddenly stopped. A feeling of stagnation, not distinguishing between friend and foe, imprisoned the will of all living beings to attack. The wind stopped. Half of the sky was drifting with snowflakes. The remaining half of the sky was sprinkled with the scorching light of the sun. The soldiers of the Alliance looked around in shock. They could not understand this situation. The sea was still crashing against the rocks on the shore, but every wave seemed to have lost its sound. Chapter 1534. The surging waves were mixed with ice particles, colliding with the boiling seawater at the magical dividing line on the surface of the water, forming a series of small whirlpools, and then constantly canceling each other out. On the island, the rising flames were still as terrifying as before. However, every cluster of flames and every field of fire was silent. Even the crackling sounds had disappeared. The situation on the entire Isle of Quel'Danas could be said to be extremely strange. Buzz buzz buzz! 6 colors of brilliance appeared on Duque's Atish. Fire, frost, arcane, thunder, light, shadow. But above these there was a 7th color. No one present could describe what kind of color this was. Everyone only knew that this was a more blurred color than the above 6 elements. Duque slowly raised Atish, and when he opened his eyes again, his eyes were already full of colorful light. And in the middle of the black pupil, the gaze was as firm as the land that would not change for 10,000 years. Kil'jaeden. Before I am a person, an existence with an independent soul, I am first and foremost a guardian. The full name of this staff is Atish, the legendary staff of the Guardian. Guardian. This name made Kil'jaeden gnash his teeth in hatred, but he had no time to hate anymore. Even he had to raise his head in shock. A strange scene was unfolding in the sky. With the addition of Duque's power, 1/3 of the power was now the dragon race, 1/3 was Elun's, and the remaining part was Duque's. As a result, the scorching sun, the night sky, and the colorful glow each occupied 1/3. It seemed that the 3 powers were different, but in fact, they all had the same source of power, which was the power law left behind by the titans of the Pantheon. In the ever-changing void, countless streams of energy were mixed together like 100 rivers flowing into the sea. They slowly flowed clockwise, emitting all kinds of blurred brilliance in the process of stirring. Snowflakes were falling, and the brilliance of the sun did not diminish. Unknowingly, the wind of all things blew again, and the flow of energy thousands of meters high in the sky did not stop for a moment. Jaina was deeply shocked. Such elemental control. Such a mixture of powers. For a mage who had spent half his life immersed in magic books, it was definitely a subversive experience. Duque raised his head slightly. His deep black pupils reflected a line of energy that split heaven and earth vertically into two halves. The energy line was very thin, like the front sight of an infrared sight. The end of the energy line was Kil Jaden's glabella, which was stuck at the portal of the Sunwell. Kil Jaden couldn't wait any longer, so he released Thousand Soul Darkness. The roaring souls let out mournful wails as they charged at Duque. It was too late. Duque smiled as he watched the pitch-black pillar of light hit him. In the next moment, Duque was still completely fine. He still had a smile on his face, and even the aftermath of darkness of 1,000 souls did not spread to the surroundings. Only those who knew the ropes knew that although Duque looked like he was still there, he was actually already in a completely different dimension from the world of Azeroth. Although it was just a space crevice, as long as Kil Jaden had not deciphered the coordinates of this space crevice, Duque was absolutely safe. At this moment, the light in the sky shone brightly. The colorful glazed color turned into an even more dazzling and gorgeous brilliance. The color did not change, but it felt sublimated to the point of the light of wisdom. The not pure brilliance seemed to also indicate that when the Titans created the world, they spread the fire of wisdom to the world, and then gave birth to infinite possibilities. And this infinite possibilities gave birth to thousands of different existences, different individuals, and they contributed their powers and merged into one. All the Alliance soldiers who were not in combat had already knelt down in front of this brilliance. Duque held a staff in his left hand and a sword in his right. His thunderous voice reverberated above the entire Isle of Quel'Danas. The burning legion that tramples on the living beings of all worlds experienced the anger of billions of living beings. The entire planet of Azeroth trembled because of Duque's words. In less than 1/100th of a second, the trembling turned into a roar of all things. From the man-made palaces, walls and floors, to the sand and grass on the ground. Even the trees, rocks, and the sea made a low and ancient sound. Reverberate. Mix, reverberate. These existences could even be traced back to the beginning of the birth of the planet. However, they all woke up and responded to the declaration of Duque, the guardian of the planet, with a repetitive resonance. That was the supreme anger in the face of the atrocities that wantonly destroyed the world. Above the heads of all the people who were witnessing the battle on the Isle of Quel'Danas, the chaotic sky formed by countless energies suddenly split apart. A dazzling golden glow, like the rising sun, slowly descended, illuminating the sky above the entire Sindorii kingdom. Even Lordaeron, which was further south, and Northrend, which was further northwest, could see this dazzling brilliance blooming in the night sky. What was reflected in everyone's eyes was a golden pillar of light. Like a spear piercing through a target, it fiercely descended from the sky and pierced through the entire night. That was the brilliance from the Pantheon. That was the light of wisdom that the Titans had bestowed upon all things. At that moment, there was no second color between heaven and earth. No. Kil Jaden struggled with all his might. Sadly, he was still completely unable to move. After injecting most of the energy of the magic net into the sky, and handing it over to Elun and the 5 dragon aspects to control, Duque injected all the remaining magic power into Atish. In the shattered void that mortals could not see, there were hundreds and thousands of spatial magic spells smashing over almost every second. Any improper response could cause Kil Jaden to break free from the imprisonment of the portal and escape. In a sense, the pressure on Duque was the heaviest. He was not only facing Kil Jaden, but also the Eridar Warlock Legion, who were desperately trying to save their master from the other side of the portal in the distorted void. Khadgar had long been at his limits. He could only rely on Duque and his system elves. Duque had the aura of 1 against 10,000. He held onto the egg tightly, not allowing him to move at all. No. Kil Jaden began to use all sorts of tricks. He flicked his 10 fingers, and a dozen soul whips extended from each fingertip, forming a large net that swept in all directions. He no longer had any hope of defeating Duque in a short period of time. He aimed at Duque's lover. He would rather endure the fierce attacks of Duque's demigods, and after a few grabs he finally caught one. Chapter 1535. Actually, with the egg's status as a paste, capturing captives on the battlefield to threaten the enemy was extremely lowly. The egg had been around for tens of thousands of years, but it had never thought of doing such a thing. But he was really anxious, even though he had only used half of his power and body this time, and was indeed injured after being completely destroyed. It was not irreparable. With Archimonde as a precedent, Kil'jaeden would leave behind enough soul to recover to its peak state, and store it in the deepest part of the twisting void. Having made preparations beforehand did not mean that he was willing to admit defeat. This was a huge loss. If the other two army leaders were still around, this loss was a loss. The point was that he was the only one left of the three army leaders. Once he ran off to rebuild his soul and body, the army would inevitably fall into a power vacuum. In order to prevent the power from being divided, he and Archimonde had joined forces to kill many challengers, or seedlings with the potential to become leaders. But now, because of his very likely failure, it would cause a terrifying chain reaction. At this moment, Kil'jaeden was so regretful that his intestines turned green. He used to be disdainful, but now he was desperate. He had heard that Duque was lustful and had many women, so he would try to capture one to threaten him. Even if it was not a complete success, making Duque hesitate might turn things around. Duke Marcus, your woman is in my hands. The egg waved the struggling female figure in its hand. Who knew silence? Silence. Deathly silence. After a short silence, the shameless Magni was the first to burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha. Puffed. The onlookers, William and the other two, laughed as well. In the end, even the serious Theon couldn't help but laugh. At this moment, even the egg, a genius with an IQ of 50, realized that something was wrong. Because he suddenly realized that the figure struggling in his giant red claw had the same face and clothes as the dreamy-eyed girl hiding behind Duque. Duque raised his first finger. First, Imriel is not my woman. At this point, Duque's hoof was already blushing. Second, the one you caught is a fake. As soon as Duque's voice fell, the golden figure in the egg's hand transformed into a streak of light and disappeared into the air. Duque smiled and pointed to the sky. Looking at the increasingly surging and massive planetary energy beams in the sky, Kil'jaeden finally fell into despair. Alessia, Sailoras, you two bitches. Kil'jaeden's final roar could be heard from outside the Sunwell Highlands, scaring the Eridar twins out of their invisible state. In the end, this was also their fault. In the report to Kil'jaeden, Duque was described as a cross-race dating expert. Duque's new hobbies had become female dragons, Naga, and Draenei. A truly awesome lie was 90% true and 10% false. The most fatal part was to trick people at the crucial point. According to this theory, the two demigods, Onyxia and Vashti, were either not present, or would they be easy to capture? Of course, Duque was also guarding against Kil'jaeden's desperate actions. In fact, when the egg summoned a bunch of demon lords, Duque had already evacuated the Alliance's powerhouses. King against king, general against general, this was the tacit rule of war. No one could leave the other party's boss and run off to bully noobs. Duque also took the opportunity to protect his own woman in disguise, and the only one left was Imriel. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Duque pulled his hoof into the spatial rift where he was, and conveniently left an illusory reality outside. Bang! With the combined efforts of Elun and the Pentashade Guardian Dragon, the energy of a small half of planet Azeroth turned into a slender golden line and accurately poured onto Kil'jaeden's head. Surprisingly, there was no earth-shattering explosion, nor was there a terrifying power that destroyed everything around it. There was only an extremely strange and quiet melting. Kil'jaeden's body, which was as large as a small mountain, fell on his back. His chest was facing the sky, and his hands were flat. Because of the existence of his wings, His head drooped backward powerlessly. Such a huge commotion turned out to be all bark and no bite. What did this mean? That's it. In the distance of the Sunwell Highlands, many Alliance soldiers heard Kil'jaeden's long howl before he died. A captain slapped the recruit on the back of his head and scolded, "Idiot! If there's really a big explosion, once the Sunwell is blown up, we and the elves will all die." He was right. It was precisely because the consequences were very likely to be very serious, and it would affect the entire Rotterdam continent at any moment, that Elun, and the Pentashade Guardian Dragon, had to personally take action. It was precisely because there was a powerful goddess guiding this exaggerated power that mortals could not imagine that they could achieve such an ultra-precise blow that was as sharp as a scalpel. It could be said that this control was the biggest difference between a demigod and a true god. Duque himself was good at dealing with changeable situations, but Duque was completely helpless against such precise control. It was something that could only be achieved after countless years of experience. It was almost metaphysical. A little more might cause an explosion. A little less might not kill the egg. Duque really couldn't compare to Elun when it came to such work that required a lot of experience points. However, it didn't matter. Kil'jaeden was dead. Although it was only a blow to the forehead, even from a mortal's point of view, a blow to the forehead that went straight to the end of the skull was a fatal wound that was absolutely incurable. Kil'jaeden's massive body began to melt from the forehead like a candle that had been burnt out, turning into a puddle of demonic aggregates or something else. Anyway, under the purification of Elun's lunar goddess light, he would eventually disappear from this world. The only thing left behind was the epic-level equipment that was wrapped in golden light. Of course, there was one exception. Wait, Queen Sylvanas was completely attracted by the orange light amidst the purple-blue light of the epic-level equipment. The gauntlet that resembled a pair of wings, the flamboyant body of the bow, and the azure background, the orange-grade artifact, Solidar Wrath of the Stars, that only Kil'jaeden would drop in history was presented in front of Queen Ciriana, without revealing anything. Sylvanas seemed to have sunk into some kind of confusion, as if she was caressing Duke, intimately caressing the body of the bow, as well as the bowstring. When she tried to pull the bowstring, a sharp arrow formed from starlight impressively appeared between the bowstring and the body of the bow. "It's yours, no doubt." "Without a doubt," Duke said to Queen Sylvia with a smile. "But, trust me, in the entire alliance, there's no one who can use this divine artifact better than you." Chapter 1536. It was a divine weapon. This was the first divine bow in the Alliance of Heroes. With the wind sword and Balrog hammer, the other long-range professions were already envious. Duque's Atish was inherited, so there was nothing much to say. Therefore, the appearance of the first divine bow still made a few bow-wielding heroines envious. Actually, Tyrande was also an expert with a bow, but she was not only a ranger, but also a high priestess. Her starfall was what the big shots in the Alliance valued the most, which meant that she could only use the bow as a support attack. Her main source of income was still her divine arts. Originally, there were still people in the Alliance who could compete with Queen Ciriana for this divine bow, but unfortunately, all of the remaining candidates had the surname Windrunner. Second sister, congratulations. I'm suddenly blaming myself for getting pregnant so early. In the mirror image of the magic transmission, it was the usually mature eldest sister Aurelia, who pretended to be pounding her chest and stamping her feet. Second sister, you're indeed worthy of this divine bow. Sasha, on the other hand, didn't have much of an emotional reaction. She just gently caressed her slightly bulging belly. She, who was the most active, had completely entered the role of a wife. It was hard to conceive a demigod's child, and after so long, the Windrunner sisters' bellies were at most the size of a 4-month pregnant human woman. The fourth sister, Lilith, didn't care much. After all, this was the glory of the Windrunner family. She calmly accepted the fact that her talent and achievements weren't as good as her 3 sisters. As the eldest and third sisters rested, She took on more of the task of long-range damage in the Alliance of Heroes. This time, defeating Kil'jaeden was more like a feast for the Alliance of Heroes. For example, Burning Justice, a plate armor helmet that strengthened intelligence and spirit, was naturally given to Hoof. After all, from now on, Riataline had a companion. Of course, Holy Spirit Hammer. A hammer for healing paladins. Needless to say, everyone had one. The Van Cleef father and daughter each had a one-handed dagger, Apocalypse. Kil'jaeden's collection was so rich that even Duque, who entered the Divine Realm, couldn't avoid it. Of course, at his level, he would no longer simply collect equipment. He used a method similar to enchantment dismantling to dismantle the extra high-tier epic-level equipment. And by analyzing the magic buffs inside, he strengthened his own strength. For example, the mage robe that was solidified using ordinary tactics could withstand the slashes of ordinary swords. Then after using the tactics from Kil'jaeden's collection, it could withstand the slashes of small electric saws. Even Duque couldn't help but be impressed by the Eridar family's tens of thousands of years of magical civilization. In just 10 minutes, the Alliance heroes finished splitting the loot. Actually, it wasn't a big deal. Equipment was divided by class. Heroes of the same class were basically all familiar faces. They would see each other all the time, so there was no point in stealing equipment. After all, if you got the best equipment, you would have the responsibility to rush to the front next time, or deal the most beautiful damage, and save every brother and sister that could be saved. Without Kil'jaeden, cleaning up the battlefield and taking care of the surviving Void Lords was naturally left to Duque's group of elemental emissaries and semi-god subordinates. When the Alliance heroes finished splitting the loot, the entire Sunwell Highlands was already settled. They didn't simply kill all the demons. Other than the stubborn idiots, most of the demons, regardless of whether they were soldiers, elites, or demon lords, were captured. Ever since Azeroth had the warlock profession, it was much easier to enslave demons. Of course, these were demons that Duque's subordinates had spent a lot of effort to capture. He wouldn't just let anyone play with them. The Alliance leaders all knew that Duque was going to undergo stress training. Demons were powerful and scary, but even if they were given a three-dimensional image, it was far from being able to experience it for real. Before the first battle at the Dark Portal, Duque had used Naga to simulate orcs. Now he could directly use a genuine demon to teach the new recruits a lesson. The effect would definitely be perfect. Duque wouldn't use a bunch of demons to show off. He had long since ordered that they had to fight for real, be it mock battles or anything else. He hadn't even walked out of the Sunwell, and he had already set the battle loss ratio for the new recruits, 5%. It was better to eliminate unqualified fellows before they went to the battlefield than to have 50% of them wiped out as soon as they went on the battlefield. Even with the large-scale use of the cannons of Holy Light, the battle losses at the front line were still high. This was because the vitality, speed, and agility of the demons still exceeded the limits of many people's imagination. Of course, that was a story for later. At this moment, it was time to celebrate victory. The developed magic communication network allowed Duque and the others to transmit images to the entire Isle of Quel'Danas, all the major cities in the Alliance, and all the villages and towns with magic images the moment they stepped out of the gate of the Sunwell Highlands. Even the main halls of the leaders in the major cities of the tribe had a live broadcast of magic images. Almost the moment they saw Duque come out, the entire Alliance boiled over. People let out all kinds of cheers and screams. The commotion quickly subsided. The civilians suppressed the excitement in their hearts and prepared to listen to Duque's speech. On the Isle of Quel'Danas, in the Overwatch Castle, in the major cities of the Alliance, in the barracks, all the generals and soldiers raised their heads and raised their right hands in a military salute. Duque's direct servants, the Karakis and Nagas, bowed and knelt one after another, placing their right hands on their chest to show supreme respect to their master. A few seconds later, Duque's familiar voice echoed in everyone's ears. My compatriots of Azeroth, I'm pleased to announce that in the Battle of the Sunwell Highlands just now, We have once again thwarted the Burning Legion's plot to devour planet Azeroth. With the help of the goddess Elun, the Dragon Slumber Temple, and the other dragon aspects, we worked together and successfully killed the Burning Legion's commander, Kil'jaeden. This time, the entire alliance was really boiling. Long live the alliance. Long live Commander Marcus. Praise Elun. Praise the dragon aspects. Azeroth is invincible. Countless people hugged the people around them and shed tears of emotion. The matter of the Sun Well was kept a secret. After the Alliance issued an emergency mobilization order, everyone subconsciously thought that it would be another protracted war. They didn't expect the Alliance to destroy the strong enemy so quickly and turn this terrifying war, which was likely to spread, into a lightning war. The Alliance was not afraid of war, but it didn't mean that they liked war. To be able to deal with the Burning Legion's surprise attack so cleanly was not only proof of their strength, but also a great achievement that was enough to make every Alliance person stand up straight and be proud. Chapter 1537. Duque continued. This battle is very dangerous, and it is not an exaggeration to say that it will affect the survival of planet Azeroth. If we really let Kil'jaeden descend, then we will all be finished. After saying that, Duque raised his hand, and in the palm of his hand, the scene of Kil'jaeden's body, being stuck in the middle of Elun's attack, until he was defeated and killed was presented to millions of people in the Alliance. Fortunately this time, because Her Majesty Sylvanas discovered it early, I was able to arrive in time and block Kil'jaeden's portal in advance. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. I know that this war was sudden, and the victory came surprisingly quickly. Even the main fleet of our alliance was still gathering, and the war was already over. I want to say that everyone's efforts were not in vain. If not for everyone's efforts, we would never know where the limit of our mobilization is. Without the experience of war, our army would not be able to grow, and we would not be able to protect our brothers and sisters, friends, fellow citizens. This is not the final ending. As long as the Twisted Nether is not completely destroyed, the demons can continue to resurrect. Yes, we succeeded in killing Kil'jaeden. However, this demon commander will resurrect again in 10 years at most. So, our duty is not over, and our battle is not over. Building a strong army to protect us, and even the entire planet Azeroth, is a long way to go. For the happiness and future of our descendants, please continue to support the Alliance. Duque's words were met with thunderous applause and cheers that rose to the heavens. Following that, after the leaders of the Alliance gave their respective speeches, another triumphant return ceremony was decided. The Alliance was overjoyed, and the Horde was shocked. Originally, the Horde was skeptical of the Alliance's claim that they could handle it, and Sal had even begun to mobilize for war. Although the Alliance and the Horde were now on good terms, they were not in the same boat after all. And if the Alliance failed, Azeroth would be finished, and the Horde would also suffer. Sal could not put all his hopes on the Alliance. Now that the Alliance had won, Sal heaved a sigh of relief. The consecutive years of war had caused the fragile economic system of the tribe to collapse. Now they were completely relying on the blood transfusion of the Alliance to provide them with a large amount of food, wood for building houses, and daily necessities that amounted to tens of thousands of tons every month. That was how they managed to maintain the operation of the entire tribe. Hearing that the Alliance had won, Sal immediately contacted Duque to congratulate him. Even after the call ended, Sal still received congratulations from the Alliance ambassador. Back in Orgrimmar, Varrock, Salyafar and Wujin sighed a little. It was especially so for Varrock. Unknowingly, the batch of beastmen who had participated in the Battle of the Dark Portal had grown old. However, not only did the Alliance grow stronger by the day, the leader of the Alliance, Duque, still looked like a young man. Varrock was stunned for a moment before he remembered that Duque's age was fixed at 18, because of his eternal life. Varrock sighed softly. Fortunately, my son is starting to grow up. In the tribe, the one who was the most shocked was the Sun King, Anastrian. His withered palms trembled. Duke Marcus didn't find out, right? He shouldn't have. Damn, why are the Burning Legion's leaders so weak? Are they all useless? The 3 leaders all died at the hands of Duque. Ever since he had become a dead man, the Sun King thought that he had forgotten the feeling of fear. The undead should not be afraid. He was wrong. Very wrong. Even his soul was trembling now. He had joined the Burning Legion because he believed that the Legion would win. In his opinion, it would be strange if the Legion could not win. The powerful and endless number of demons was not something that the Alliance, which only had a few million soldiers, could fight against. Not to mention the Alliance, even the Sleeping Dragon Temple and Elun would not be enough. As long as the demon army entered Azeroth, it was only a matter of time before the entire planet was flattened. However, the Sun King did not take into account the 2 factors of traitors and traitors. With the help of the Eridar Gemini, Duke managed to turn what could have been an all-out war into a war that could have been controlled in terms of intensity and scope. This forced the Sun King into an extremely awkward and frightening situation. The Forsaken had relied on the tribe's protection to escape the Alliance's pursuit and settle down. Once the tribe found out that the Sun King had let a wolf into the house, Sal would never forgive him and the Forsaken. It was very likely that the tribe would clean up before the Alliance did anything. This was not impossible. Duque had already informed the tribe about the Void battlefield. As the 5-color Guardian Dragons had concentrated their firepower on Kill Jaden, many defensive points in the Void battlefield had been broken. A large number of demons had descended. Although these demons were not strong, the tribe had begun to receive reports of attacks. These trivial matters would undoubtedly hinder the tribe's revitalization plan and make the great Chief Sal even angrier. I hope the 2 female demons and Kill Jaden don't betray me. The Sun King could only hope that Kill Jaden would still think of him and support him after he was resurrected, instead of betraying him. Anastrian did not know that his little thoughts had already fallen into Duque's eyes. Furthermore, the female demons he had high hopes for had long sold him out. The Eridar twins, who had successfully jumped ship to Duque's side, were now busy. They first secretly found Tyron, who had used the portal to run to the Karazhan to prepare for a victory celebration. They're looking for me. Tyron felt that it was strange that the Eridar twins were looking for her. Should we ask them to leave? Feathermoon General Chandris asked, gritting her teeth. Let them in. Tyron sighed. At least I know them. Although it's an ill-fated relationship, Tyron would never forget that she had almost been forced to become an ex by these 2 female demons in the ancient war. After all, these 2 were now Duque's subordinates. It was not a big deal to meet them in private. As soon as they met, we are here to apologize for our offense against you in the ancient war. This is one of our treasures. We have no use for it. Why don't we give it to you, mistress? Tyron's pupils constricted when she saw it. Even she had such an expression on her face, let alone Chandris, who was guarding the side. This is, Elises immediately replied. This is a gift from Queen Azhara, when we went to Azhara. Saloras said, this is the crystallization of the wisdom of the High Elves. High Elven Golden Bow, or rather the Kuel Salis Golden Bow in history. Chapter 1538. Be it Solidar Wrath of the Stars, or this Golden Bow, they were both made by High Elven craftsmen. High Elven Golden Bow was extremely beautiful. Because they came from the same source, it had the same style. The Golden Bow also had a large gauntlet that looked like an arm shield. The gauntlet had the totem of a fire phoenix on it. The bow that extended from the gauntlet was made into the shape of a golden dragon eagle. It had a red background with golden edges. The eagle's head was lifelike, and the beak was connected to the edge of the gauntlet. Further out from the eagle-shaped bow were 2 green curved scythe-like blades on top and bottom. Together with the Golden Bow's shape, the Golden Bow could be treated as a slightly weaker version of Azanatha's Warblade. What attracted Tyron the most was the history of this bow. This was the pinnacle of High Elven craftsmanship from 10,000 years ago. Although she did not want to admit it, after the destruction of Azhara, This level of craftsmanship was lost. Tyron gently caressed the bow, a thoughtful expression on her face. Finally, she let out a long sigh. I'll accept your kindness. The Gemini were not acting. They were truly relieved. Duque had forced them to betray him, but he had never promised them any benefits after they jumped ship. Either way, they would be dead meat if they did not jump ship. Perhaps there would be some hope if they did. The smart Gemini did not want to bet their lives on Duque's mercy, so they decisively started their public relations operation. Their first stop was obviously Tyron. Now that Tyron had accepted the gift, the most difficult part had been resolved. Tyron sat on the sofa with her legs crossed. The White Moon Priest's robe made her look even more outstanding. The Gemini could not associate this noble woman in front of them with the female captive, who had almost fallen into depravity in the War of the Ancients. If they were enemies, the Gemini would have done anything to cause trouble. But now they were not even grandchildren. Tyron glanced at the Gemini who were still kneeling on the floor and smiled. Actually, I have to thank you. If not for you, I might have had no choice but to choose between my two childhood friends. That way, no matter which one I chose, the other would have been greatly hurt. Since things ended well back then, I have no intention of pursuing the matter. I just want to remind you. Gemini hurriedly bowed and kowtowed, her posture extremely humble. What do you think? Please instruct me. Tyron smiled, as if she was organizing her thoughts. A few seconds later she said slowly, there was once a black dragon who was sinister and cunning. He wanted to infiltrate the Alliance and take control of the entire Alliance. She almost succeeded. However, in the end, she gave up all her plans and willingly became a mount. Do you know why? Tyron was naturally referring to the Black Dragon Princess, Onyxia. To be honest, Gemini was also a little curious about this matter. Tyron's face was filled with fervent conviction, because she said that going against Duke Marcus is the same as going against the god of fate. Rather than being crushed and destroyed by fate, it's better to become the god of fate's subordinate. After saying this, Tyron waved her hand, and Chandrese immediately stood between her and Gemini. She was sending them off. The Gemini twins were shocked. They had too much shock that they had yet to digest. As a pair of cunning female demons, they had too many tricks up their sleeves. They never really wanted to rely on Duque. From start to finish, it was a choice made out of helplessness. In fact, they didn't even think that Duque would be able to kill Jaden. Duque had once again fought a beautiful battle, cleanly killing the most sinister and cunning demon in the Burning Legion. He didn't even give Jaden the slightest chance. Of course, part of this was because they had betrayed their boss. However, the important things like timing, whether to trust the information, and making decisions were all handled by Duque alone. More importantly, Duque's subordinates and his harem were all united. This gave the Gemini twins a huge headache. As long as the Burning Legion was not completely destroyed, they had to live under Duque's protection. Otherwise, they would have to gamble that the Legion would not be able to find them. Unfortunately, in the past 25,000 years, there were only two groups of demons that the Legion could not catch even if they wanted to. One was Valen's Drenii, and the other was Duque's Mark Dooku. The entire Legion knew how miserable Valen and his tribesmen were when they were being hunted down. Duque was the only one who made the Legion depressed for 10,000 years. This was because this guy ran away after acting cool. How exciting! This 10,000 years of reincarnation made the Gemini twins a little nervous. They had second thoughts. If Duque blamed them, wouldn't that mean? The Gemini twins didn't dare to imagine it. At this time, they didn't dare to look for Duque either. They knew very well that they didn't have anything that Duque had to rely on. In fact, Duque didn't have the time either. He was ambushed in his own bedroom. Sneak attack. He directly used cut to replace the armor. In fact, Duque gave up on resisting when he saw the huge blue blade. As for the last move, the 5-starry charm, it was an additional critical hit. Well, it was that simple to defeat a demigod. Duque, who was lying on his back, looked at Servanas with some embarrassment. Duque was very sure that he didn't have the paladin's anti-damage skill. So why did Queen Maoshi look like her armor had been broken? A leather armor good rating. Short cloak and boots good rating. Holding the divine longbow, solid our wrath of the stars bad rating. Initiative plus 100% rating. At this moment, Queen Maoxi's face had a fanatical excitement. Excuse me, have you become a berserker? Servanas raised her chin 45 degrees and gave Duque a provocative look. Come on. We've demigod Duque, show me your divine sword. Let me tell you. Tonight, I swear to slay a god. Oh, if you don't clean up after 3 days, you're going to tear the roof tiles off. Duque sneered. Just you. I'm not afraid even if you 3 sisters attack together. Not to mention you. You're courting death. Queen Maoxi blushed. At most, I'll fight again and again. Since the duel flag had fallen from the sky, he couldn't blame anyone else for suffering the consequences. Duque's divine sword began to show its ferocious power. Hee. Die. Admit defeat. You're no match for me. This was, of course, a certain demigod's boasting. No, I'll never admit defeat. An hour passed. Hey, can you still do it? If you can't, don't call yourself a god slayer. You bastard, if you're so good, don't use your demigod body. Queen Mao continued to be stubborn. Fine, we'll talk about it later. It turned out that Queen Maoxi's damage output depended on her roar. No. Chapter 1539. Apart from Aurelia and Sasha, Duque found a chance to clean up his harem. Of course, Duque used Master's Gift and Dragon Taming Skill on Vashj and Onyxia, who performed outstandingly in the Well of the Sun incident. When Duque carefully studied the female Naga's blood rush in her high elf form, as well as the exploration in the dragon's lair, Duque put on his coat and went to the study to take stock of the current situation of the Alliance. It was now the 25th year of the Dark Portal. Although the major events in history happened as expected, the current situation of the Alliance was very different from history. First of all, the 7 human kingdoms were either still alive, or like Stromgard, they had begun to rebuild their capital, the Riptide Fortress. Not only had their vitality been preserved, but it had also improved greatly compared to history. Secondly, it was the geographical advantage. After the battle at the Well of the Sun, it could basically be said that the entire Eastern Kingdom was united. Why did it say basically? Although the Amani trolls were cleared in the Lordaeron continent, the remaining trolls went south into the hinterlands and merged with the trolls there. They used the complicated terrain and tunnels to confront the Wildhammer dwarves in the Eagle's Nest Mountain. Tunnel warfare was a huge problem since ancient times. For the sake of survival, the trolls shamelessly played tunnel warfare. There was really no good solution. The only thing they could do was to let the Bronzebeard dwarves work together with the Wildhammer dwarves to slowly push forward. Duque had a better idea, but he needed time. Gilnis, the only one among the 7 human kingdoms who did not join the Alliance, was still playing with himself. After all, they were all humans. Duque could not force Zeon Grameen to join the Alliance. That would not be in line with the purpose of the Alliance. Moreover, Gilnis would destroy himself sooner or later. When Zeon became the Alpha Wolf, the Alliance could completely consolidate its rule in Lordaeron. After 10 years, the plague and corrosion in the northern Lordaeron were basically purified by the Cenarian Circle's druids. Food production and population were recovering. Overall, the Lordaeron continent did not have much of a problem. The situation in the southern continent was much more complicated. Although Duque had always hoped that the Bronzebeard dwarves could occupy more territory, it was actually too much. Magni and his brothers were very impressive. The Alliance's largest weapons center was at Steel Stove Castle, and so was the Technology Center. Almost all of the flying ships and cannons were in charge of Steel Stove Castle. Although the dwarves' fertility rate wasn't low, it was only relative to the elves. With the Bronzebeard dwarves' small population, after occupying Iron Furnace Castle's Dan Morrower, Loch Moden in the east, the wetlands in the northeast, the barren lands in the southeast, and the original Scorching Canyon, Magni made a vow. I don't want any more territory. The bronze-bearded dwarfs had little need for territory. Their hobbies were more focused on forging and climbing the technology tree. They even returned the wetlands fortress of grim battle to their brother, the Wildhammer dwarfs. Duque really didn't know if he should warn the Wildhammer dwarfs. Sooner or later, someone would cause trouble in the Twilight Highlands to their east. The southern end of the southern continent was flooded due to the molten core. The burning steppes no longer lived up to its name. This was because a large river originated from the Black Rock Mountain and ran from west to east across the entire plain. It flowed from the foot of the Raging Flame Peak, in the middle of the plain to the barren land. The burning steppes was previously covered in thick volcanic ash. Now that there was water, and the volcanic ash itself was rich in minerals, this made the burning steppes the most fertile land in the whole of Stormwind. William was overjoyed. Originally, William was still wondering if he should negotiate with Duque to take the Redridge Mountains under the direct jurisdiction of the kingdom, so that the royal family's territories could be linked together. Duque found it troublesome, so he gave William a brilliant idea: to dig a hole in the mountains in the north of the Elven Forest and open 2 large tunnels, one for carriages and the other for trains, directly to the southwest of the burning steppes. The territory is yours, and I'll pay for it. That's generous enough, right? William, of course, accepted this suggestion happily. According to the current level of engineering technology, it would only take 1 or 2 years for the tunnels to open. This was because during his tenure, William had defeated the great demons who worshipped Hacker and occupied Zulg Europe. Now he had added the huge fertile land of the burning steppes to Stormwind. In Stormwind, many people had already started to call William the Holy King. In fact, since ancient times, the kings who could leave a good name in history were those who defended against foreign enemies and opened up new lands. William had achieved both of them, and his name in the annals of history was set in stone. The praise of the people also made William proud. It was said that he almost gave his son, the infamous dirty shepherd Anduin Wren, a brother. In the southern continent, most of the great demons had become specimens. Before the Battle of Ahn'Qiraj, Duque had purposely cleansed Stormwind and his own private army. Firstly, there was indeed a reason for the cleansing, and secondly, Duque was not interested in leaving behind future troubles. If these fellows suddenly turned over a new leaf and claimed to be converted to the Horde, with the current relationship between the Alliance and the Horde, Sal could ask for them from Duque, and Duque would be too embarrassed to refuse. Since the remnants of Zulg Europe still believed in Hacker, then sorry, please go on your way. However, there was a troll clan that Duque could not lay his hands on. That was the Zandalar trolls. These wise trolls from the era of the Dark Empire were not only wise, but could also play with magic. When the Alliance was clearing out the Zulg Europe trolls, they had also put in a lot of effort and led the way. Furthermore, they occupied a palm-sized island in the sea west of Stranglethorn Vale. So the Alliance really had no reason to deal with them. They might as well establish a neutral race. They would not bully them, nor would they allow them to open up new territories in the Eastern Kingdom. With the destruction of Zulg Europe, Stranglethorn Vale was divided equally between Stormwind and Kul Tiras. After the city of Booty Bay was built, they would be able to sleep peacefully. As for the Kalimdor continent, the support and suppression of the Horde was currently being planned. Finally, there was only one problem left. Arthas. Duque sat on the bench and let out a long sigh. If the gears of history did not change, then in at most 1 or 2 years, the Lich King would wake up from his long sleep, and Arthas' dark personality would take control of the body, preparing to launch an invasion. Naxxramas, who was supposed to be Arthas' vanguard, was already in the hands of the Alliance, so there was only one card left that was worth Duque's attention. With a thought from Duque's soul, the Eridar twins immediately came in eagerly. "Master, you were looking for us." He looked at the twins, who were wearing a translucent black veil-made uniform and had an exquisite figure. Duque smiled and pretended not to see them. "I have an important task for you." Chapter 1540. Enslaving a demon was like playing with fire. In the original history, the Doomsday Guards that the warlocks enslaved would have to be tested every once in a while. If the warlock's willpower was not strong enough, the big brother would break free and slap the warlock's face. It was not until later on, when the warlock's magic developed, that there was semi-permanent enslavement. The story told Duque that he should never believe that he could completely control a demon, and he should never judge a demon's values by the logic of an ordinary person. Although the Eridar Gemini looked like they were about to die, they would definitely sell him out as soon as they lost the pressure from Kill Jaden, or if they thought that they had a better way. Reality proved that even soul restraint was not that reliable. Since Duque could cut off a part of their souls, the enemy could do the same thing in the future and instigate the Gemini to betray him. The Eridar tribe had been with the Burning Legion for 25,000 years and had completely become a branch of the demons. Therefore, the Gemini could use them, but not put them in an important position. However, the Black Sickle Council was made up entirely of warlocks. With the history of the Eridar Gemini enslaving the Eridar Gemini as a reference, Duque knew very well how to use the two female demons. Thud! Duque threw a document on the ground. Duque had never been one to overdo such arrogance, but it was a great deterrent to the Gemini. The seemingly gentle smile turned into a sneer in the Gemini's eyes. The Gemini thought to herself, he must be complaining that we didn't directly participate in the battle against Kill Jaden, and drew a line with the Burning Legion. The Gemini, who was kneeling on the ground, moved her knees and crawled over to pick up the document. She secretly heaved a sigh of relief. They were still useful to Duque. Sailoras, the Doomsday Army's bones will soon spread the plague. You'll be in charge of the Lordaeron region. You'll be in charge of infiltrating the tribe's warlocks. The Gemini, who was initially a little anxious, immediately became flirtatious. Even her voice sounded flirtatious. Do you have any special orders, Master? Duque thought it was funny. Originally, during the final battle with the Burning Legion in history, the bosses of each profession had their own performances. Warlocks were the worst of them all, as a single demon lord had almost annihilated the Black Sickle Council. The others would have invited the Elemental Lords, or the former Torbane King of Torrent Fort. However, the new Black Sickle Council was so poor that they could only send the Eridar Gemini to be the vanguard. Charging at the front was Gemini's final choice. If they could, they absolutely hated fighting. Therefore, Duque didn't need them to fight for him, which was very considerate of him. Dealing with the envoy of calamity who spread the plague was like fighting poison with poison. As a scheming female demon, of course, she knew how to infiltrate in the most secretive and effective way. Infiltration was the Gemini's favorite activity. Seeing that her own sister was playing infiltration while she could only play with bones, even Queen Salolas showed a little envious expression. Duque did not look at Salolas. He only stared at Elisa's. Sal has begun to study the path of elements. In fact, this was in conflict with the warlock path. I have no intention of dealing with Sal. However, in the future, Sal is destined to be unable to suppress the more traditional young faction in the tribe. Once Sal gives up his position due to some unforeseen event, such as an elemental riot, I will need a key chess piece. Ever since the Eridar Gemini decided to rely on Duque, they had done a lot of homework. They had to understand the current situation of the Alliance, such as the situation of the tribe. It was precisely because the Alliance was completely united that no force other than Duque could affect the overall situation. That was why they were so respectful of their new master. The tribe was different. At first glance, the tribe had gained more than 2 million orcs, allowing the orcs to become the absolute core race of the tribe in one fell swoop. This made the tribe even more powerful. It didn't feel bad, did it? In reality, the tribe was now really in a precarious situation. Sal had saved so many orcs from the old tribe from the dead land of Draenor. In a short period of time, every orc would be deeply grateful to Sal. However, after a long time, it would be a different story. The orcs of the traditional tribe were typical nomadic people. They would migrate to wherever there was prey. However, a complete and thriving food chain needed fertile land to support it. First, there had to be grass. Then there were small and medium-sized herbivores. And then there were large carnivores. The current territory of the tribe was all on the Kalimdor continent of Azeroth. The Forgotten's Winterspring, the Tauren's Thunder Cliff, the Troll's Echo Islands, and the Shining Plains, which was now controlled by the Rustwater conglomerate. Putting aside the territories of other tribes, the areas directly controlled by the orcs were now very barren. Duroder, the Barren Lands, the Thousand Needles, and half of Stonedalen Mountain. Among them, Stonedalen Mountain had a territorial dispute with the Night Elves. In the entire Kalimdor continent, there were not many areas for the tribe to expand. The northern Night Elves occupied Azhara, Grey Valley, Fellwood Forest, Black Sea Coast, and Mount Hyjal, completely cutting off the tribe's space to expand north. The two main cities of Exodar and Darnassus, which were in the northwest, were warning the tribe not to play with their navy here. In the east, Theramore was stuck in the middle of the tribe's territory like a nail, like a fishbone stuck in the throat, making the tribe very uncomfortable. In the south, Gadgetzan in the Great Tanaris Desert was a neutral trade zone. The goblins there, and the Rustwater conglomerate were not on the same side. After the Karaji insect empire turned to Duque, they regained their foothold, and together with the Cenarian Circle, mixed with the Hot Sand group of Gadgetzan, and jointly developed the Ungoro crater. Originally, the Hot Sand group was quite angry when they lost Booty Bay. The problem was that the Alliance gave the Hot Sand group a chance, but they couldn't get it back by sending troops. After the Alliance occupied Booty Bay, they didn't return it to the Hot Sand group. Kul Dylas was ready to make it the new capital. The goblins were not so good-tempered. Even Sal and Wujin were ready to watch the show at that time. Who knew that Duque and Jaina would be so shameless? They directly knocked out the Hot Sand group with a stick and gold. Booty Bay was fought by the trolls. If you don't have the ability to fight back, don't talk nonsense here. It's obvious that you can't handle it yourself, so the Alliance killed the trolls. The Alliance took the Deepwater port from the trolls with their strength. Why should the Alliance return it? If you make any more noise, we will take it as a declaration of war against the Alliance. All pro-Alliance forces, including the Bronze Dragon and the Karaji Insect Empire, will launch an attack on Gadgetzan. Are you convinced? At this point, what else could the Hot Sand group do? They couldn't beat the Alliance, so they could only surrender to the couple Duque and Jaina. The stick shocked the goblins, so it was naturally a sweet date. The Alliance needs a lot of minerals, volcanic soil, rare earth. Let's develop the Ungoro crater together. Chapter 1541. Most goblins only recognized money. In the eyes of most goblins, the Horde was poor. How could they be as rich as the Alliance? What's more, the three richest families in the Alliance were the Kurtiras, Alterac, and Marcus families. The three families almost shared the same purse. Offending one was offending all three, and the Alliance's leader was still the demigod Duque. There was no need to say how the Hot Sand group would choose. The defection of the Hot Sand group directly made the Horde's southern expansion a bubble. After all, the Rustwater conglomerate could not go to war with its own compatriots for the Horde. The only way to expand was to the west, the desolate land in Feralis. The former was ownerless, while the latter was occupied by a group of neutral forces that were not under the Alliance's protection, such as the arena slave owners who had sold William as a slave gladiator. In the past, Sal would have handled the relationship with these neutral forces more carefully. Unfortunately, the food pressure brought by more than 2 million orcs was so great that Sal could not breathe. The Horde could not rely on the Alliance's food support, and the Alliance's food was mainly cereals, which was not suitable for the traditional orc's appetite. Duque was generous and did not mind exporting pig-raising technology to the Horde. Unfortunately, breeding was also an industry with a knack. If you wanted to raise pigs, you had to at least have pig feed, right? After half a circle, it was actually back to the old problem. The land was too barren, and there was no industrial base and scientific knowledge. The Alliance would give the Horde a limited blood transfusion, but would never teach the Horde to produce blood. Sal was determined, and directly launched a war involving hundreds of thousands of orcs. The first war started in Duroder, and the horde directly used human wave tactics to destroy the Centaur tribe entrenched in the south of Durotor. Then two fronts, one south and one north, swept through the desolate land and Feralas at the same time. It was worth mentioning that a newcomer rose in the horde. He was Gurus Hellscream, the son of Lord Howl Grom. Gurus was born in Draenor's Orc home garden Nagrand. His growth was not contaminated by the demonic blood flowing in the invading Azeroth orcs. Although he was not affected by the corruption, Gurus had always lived under the shadow of his past. His father, Grom, was the first orc to be corrupted by drinking the blood of Manaroth, the Lord of the Abyss. Gurus had been ashamed of his father's actions until he met Thrall, the great chief. The founder of the revived tribe told the young Gurus about how his father had fought bravely against the Lord of the Abyss, Manaroth, in the Battle of Mount Hyjal, and how his father had swept through the Molten Core and killed the traitor Blackhand brothers in Blackwing's nest. Finally, after the Battle of Ahn'Qiraj, he could no longer fight and had to retreat to the second line. Unlike the original history, the original Master Ho's merits and demerits were equal, and he was worthy of respect. However, in this life, Master Ho's merits outweighed his faults. As the founder of the new tribe, Master Howl used the extra time he had to live to add even more heroism to his heroic legend. If there was anything Gurus disliked about his father, it was that he had sworn to serve a human demigod after his death. Generally speaking, Gurus worshipped his father. Gurus then followed Thrall to Azeroth as an advisor. Soon, he was appointed as the leader of the Warsong clan's vanguard to wipe out the Centaurs. The courage, tenacity, and warlike he showed on the battlefield left a deep impression on the other members of the tribe. At the same time, they were worried about Gurus's indifference to the opinions of the members of the tribe, who were not orcs. Not to mention, he deeply hated the Alliance. Even if the Alliance provided the tribe with transportation to evacuate Draenor. This was obviously contrary to the current mainstream multiracial integration of the tribe, as well as the friendly policy with the Alliance. Thrall saw this, but he had no reason to punish such a young and vigorous orc. In fact, most of the orcs from Draenor had such a temper. Thrall was now in a difficult situation. However, he still had to deal with Geralt. The demigod Gruul was not a good-tempered master. The only fortunate thing was that he chose to focus on the desolate land instead of the lush Feralas region, which the tribe was more optimistic about. When Duque briefly explained the situation of the tribe to the Gemini's mind filled in a lot of things. Does Master want Horus to destroy the entire tribe by controlling the warlocks of the tribe? Not to mention Horus, even Sololas was eager to try. The Gemini was the best at this kind of thing. Duque raised his index finger and shook it. This is too low-end. The words low-end made the Gemini's face turn red. Didn't this mean that their methods were not good? Duque pondered for a moment, then said directly, Fate seems to be impermanent and irregular. In fact, the general trend of fate was decided the moment the leader made a choice. The Alliance will not take the initiative to destroy the tribe. Doing so will only make the Burning Legion happy. The power of Azeroth should not be weakened, because in 10 years at most, a full-scale war will start. But the division and conflict of the tribe was destined from the moment Thrall took in 2 million orcs to Azeroth. This rift will only get bigger and bigger. In fact, the Alliance does not need to do anything special at all. They only need to know the necessary information to be able to act at the best time and reap the greatest benefits. It's like ambushing Kil'jaeden. When Duque said this, the Gemini's heart trembled at the same time. This time, they finally understood that the difference between them and Duque was not in strength, nor was it in controlling souls, but in the realm of thinking. Just like this time, Kil'jaeden put in a lot of effort, and did not hesitate to let Illidan go. Even when the Alliance besieged the Outland, he remained silent, so that he could secretly set up a portal to the Well of the Sun to sneak in. After plotting so many schemes and spending so much time, in the end, wasn't it all because of Duke's crucial point, directly causing him to fly into the sky? This kind of taking advantage of the enemy's plots and conflicts to achieve the greatest results, with the least amount of effort, was the highest level of planning. If Kil'jaeden was a chess player with the universe as his chessboard, Then Duque should be the chess king, right? Suddenly, for the first time in their lives, the Gemini felt a sense of fear towards Duque. Could it be that Duque was really the god of fate that Tyron spoke of? The Gemini retreated. Soon, Duque summoned a second group of people. It was the Shorty King's group. The three Bronzebeard brothers, Kudrin Wildhammer, and the great craftsman Jurban. Duque said immediately, "The alliance is now like a war machine. Once the machine stops, it will be difficult to restart it. So the machine can turn slowly, but it cannot stop. I have a plan now, that is the Fearless Fortress." Chapter 1542. Fearless Fortress. Just the name alone was enough to make one's blood boil. All of a sudden, the breathing of the dwarf kings quickened, especially Muradin. He had been betrayed by Arthas, whom he had once regarded as his best friend. This was a humiliation that would never fade from his face. Arthas was not completely depraved when he pulled out Frostmourne. It was one thing not to finish Muradin off. Betraying Muradin was another. Not only Duke, but even Magni noticed that his second brother's fists were clenched so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. "Brother." His eldest brother's call made Muradin return to normal. "Sorry, I forgot myself." Seeing Muradin's quick reply, the other two brothers smiled. Magni patted Muradin's shoulder. "This is the Bronzebeard family's rock. Rock solid." This was a compliment for dwarves. Then, Magni nodded at Duque. Duque announced, "Good. As for the construction and defense of the Fearless Fortress, I'll leave it to Kudrin, Muradin and Jurban. Kudrin will be the commander of the Fearless Fortress." It was a very reasonable arrangement. Kudrin was the real king, so he was naturally the leader. Jurban was in charge of technology, and Muradin was in charge of the army. It was a very reasonable arrangement. Duque turned to Bulang. "Bring Naxramas to cover the construction of the Fearless Fortress. Of course, you won't be the only one to cover the troops." With a thought from Duque, the door to the study opened again. Two energetic elves walked in. The elemental waves on their bodies were so strong that they could be seen with the naked eye, and attracted the attention of others. It was naturally Vashj and Kale that's the two who had a difficult life in history, falling into the path of evil, and finally being destroyed at this point in time, had now become the backbone of the alliance. Duque was truly amazed at the wonders of fate. Duque smiled. "Kale, I was busy dealing with Kill Jaden, so I haven't told you about the crusade against Arthas. But I think you'll be happy to come." The handsome former prince had become more mature after going through so much. His jade-like face had a determination that had never been seen before. "Of course I'm willing. For our dead comrades. For that unforgettable history. For the future of Azeroth. I will not shirk my duty." Good. Bulang's face lit up. With a Breaking Dawn mage, who was the closest to becoming a demigod overseeing things, it was much safer. Duke looked at Vashj again. He did not say anything, and just nodded. It was precisely because they were familiar with each other that there was no need for words. This sense of intimacy and trust made Vashj even more excited with a mixture of sweetness and fanaticism. In her elven form, Vashj twirled the corners of her skirt with both hands, and performed a maidservant's bow. At this point, the early preparations for the expedition to No Scent were already perfect. Duque concluded. Lich King Nazulzul was not strong. After the fusion, it should be dominated by the will of the former Arthas. I have to say, Arthas is quite a talented fellow. Arthas will be very patient. But patience didn't mean waiting for death. Thus, my request is to complete the preparations for the Allied army's attack on Northrend, without provoking Earthies to wake up early. The Alliance needs a large batch of griffins and hippogriffs that can adapt to extreme cold weather. We need a feasible plan to quickly build a railway. We also need a forward operating base that can accommodate 500,000 troops. Everyone, let me emphasize again. This is a war between the living and the dead. There is no way out of this. Please be extremely cautious. Most of the people present had experienced the third battle of the Dark Portal, or were strong people who had already proven themselves on the battlefield. There was not even a single newbie. In addition, they had more or less worked together before. so there was no problem at all. After Duque decided on the candidates, they automatically entered the state and began to discuss countermeasures. Duque was very satisfied with this situation. The alliance indeed had him as the core, but it was not an incompetent organization that had to ask him for instructions for everything. After 25 years of campaigning, the leaders of the alliance, other than the hooligans, were all amazing people who could take charge of an area. Moreover, Duque had more important things to do. After Kudrin and the others left, Duque entered a state of meditation on the highest floor of the Karazhan Mage Tower. System Elf, establish an analysis model. Divide the entire process of my battle with Kill Jaden into different modules, with elemental fluctuations, magic circuit operation, external energy exchange, energy compression and expansion as the standard. I need to fully analyze the magic of the Eridar family and strengthen their control over the elements. The initial standard is True God level. In addition, I also need to establish a spatial model. I need to fully scan the entire planet Azeroth. I don't want the space barrier to be broken at will again. That's right. Duque found that the space barrier of Azeroth was getting more and more troublesome. Before Medivh was possessed by Sargeras and opened the dark portal, the intelligent creatures of Azeroth had a comfortable life. Ever since Oldmai was possessed and started to cause trouble, the space barrier of Azeroth had been getting worse day by day. There were internal and external reasons, so it was understandable that everyone hated Medivh. Of course, Duque didn't have the time to care about these old scores. The problem in front of him now was that the Blue Dragon King Malygos seemed to want to cause trouble. As the first person in Azeroth to be granted a magic position by the Titans, Malygos had always regarded himself as the ultimate ruler of magic. During the ancient war 10,000 years ago, he was extremely dissatisfied with the High Elves' abuse of magic, which led to the Burning Legion. The first Well of Eternity exploded, splitting the continent of ancient Kalimdor into 4 large pieces, causing devastating damage to the planet's environment. The Well of Eternity on Mount Hyjal also exploded, blowing up the entire mountain top and causing irreversible damage to the surrounding ecology. Now, even the Well of the Sun was being spied on, and Kill Jaden was almost let in. It was hard to say whether Malygos would act on a whim, as he had done in history. After all, in the original history, his wife had died and his children were gone. His once lively family had now become desolate, and the ones who did this were his brothers who had been through life and death with him. This was a huge blow, and it directly caused Malygos to become crazy. His mind was extremely unstable, and he didn't care about the Guardian of Magic at all. Just like that, he went crazy for almost 10,000 years, until he absorbed part of the Nether Dragon's essence by chance, and unexpectedly regained his sanity. But who knew that Malygos might have been crazy for too long, and he actually figured out a set of logic to convince himself. This set of logic was, mortals use magic to cause disasters, and disasters will destroy Azeroth. I'm the guardian dragon of Azeroth, so I want to ban mortals from using magic and destroy all magic creations. Chapter 1543. However, would Malygos still do the same in this life? Duke couldn't help but put a huge question mark on his head. After all, I've already avenged you, Elder Malygos. Nethario, the Wing of Death, was already 3 feet tall. And more than 20 years ago, no one really knew what kind of indescribable cruelty you did when you returned with Nethario's dragon head. You've avenged yourself, so theoretically, you shouldn't be so resentful anymore, right? Duque really couldn't make up his mind, so he could only ask Alexstrasza for help. When the human form of the Red Dragon appeared in the magic communication mirror, Duque directly asked his question. Right. Does Malygos have any opinions about the Sunwell incident? The queen put her hands on her hips and said helplessly, he's been throwing a tantrum recently. He said that the Well of Eternity and the Sunwell are scourges, and that we, the dragon aspect, can't guard against thieves no matter how hard we try. When Duque heard this, his heart skipped a beat, and he cursed inwardly. It was hard to guard against thieves day and night. If Malygos insisted on treating the Well of Eternity and the Sunwell as thieves, then it wouldn't be a good thing. The Well of Eternity had been blown up twice, and there was nothing left. Although the Blood Elves wouldn't use the Sunwell specifically now, what if Malygos interfered and said that the Blue Dragons would take care of it? Should he give it or not? If he gave it, where would Sylvanas put her face as a queen? If he didn't, what if Malygos got angry and ordered the Blue Dragon Legion to attack Silvermoon City? Silvermoon City's defense was not bad, but that was only at the level of mortals. Even though the elites of the Blue Dragons were wiped out because of Netherio's betrayal in the Ancient War, they could still pull out 8 or 10 adult dragons. If the young dragons and fledglings were included, there would be even more. Once the war with the Blue Dragon Legion started, the alliance was bound to stand on the side of the elves. At that time, how would the Dragon Sleep Temple be dealt with? In any case, the best choice was to eliminate the conflict before it started. Otherwise, when it came to the point of life and death, no matter which choice was made, it would still be Azeroth that would suffer in the end. Every time a dragon aspect died, the planet's protection array would weaken. Even if he found a successor, the new would not be as good as the old. For example, Onyxia was just there to make up the numbers. Having her was better than nothing. Dragons had their own way of thinking, and it was difficult for Duque to figure out what Malygos was thinking. In the end, he could only let out a long sigh and express his worry. Alexstrasza, you and I have known each other for so long, and you know that. I've always prioritized the safety of Azeroth. I have never wished to judge my own people with the greatest malice. But I've never been able to talk to Malygos, and I'm really worried that he'll go too far this time. You mean, if? I said if. Duque emphasized. If Malygos insists that the Sunwell is a scourge, I can agree to seal it on behalf of Queen Sylvanas. However, he definitely couldn't hand over the task of guarding this place to the Blue Dragon tribe. At least not on the surface. Do you understand what I mean? When Duque said this, Alexstrasza's eyes lit up, and her bright pupils shone with a dazzling light. Hee. As expected. I knew you had a better idea. Only now was the Red Dragon Queen willing to tell the truth. Actually, since the day they defeated Kill Jaden, Malygos had been throwing a tantrum in the Dragon Slumber Temple and smashing several side halls. He was really shouting that mortals were not qualified to use such terrifying magic. Duque secretly compared it, and found that Malygos was slightly milder than in the original history. At least he didn't claim that mortals were not even qualified to use magic. However, Malygos proposed to put all magic users under supervision. For example, all humans and elves should be connected to Duque's magic net, and all mages should be regulated. All spellcasters who did not connect to the magic net should be killed upon discovery to prevent future trouble. Now this was because Duque had helped him take revenge, and because Duque was now a true demigod of Azeroth. Even so, Malygos' words were still unacceptable to Duque. How could the world be so simple? This kind of black and white approach would only force all neutral parties to stand against one's own. Moreover, all models and regulations would only stifle the invention of all new magic. This was what Duque valued the most and could not accept. Duque pondered for a long time. Alexstrasza, can you help me make an appointment with Malygos? There are some things I want to make clear to him in person. The Red Dragon Queen shook her head regretfully. Sorry, that guy is stubborn and loves face. He used to look down on you. No, it should be said that he looked down on all existences other than the dragon aspect and Elun. Now that you are on equal footing with him, he can't accept it. In fact, even if you use magic to send him a message, he will refuse to answer. Duque was embarrassed. Malygos, why did you give up treatment? After complaining in his heart, Duque could only sigh. Well, then I suggest that we let Kalegos and Matagosa guard the Sunwell. As for the rest, when he calms down, you can slowly persuade him. Okay, thank you for your understanding. The Red Dragon Queen showed an apologetic expression. After ending the magic transmission, Duque's eyes and expression became cold. Malygos, don't be untactful. Since you are fated to die in history, if I try my best, and you still insist on courting death, then don't blame me. Even if I pretend to be a good person, there is a limit. This time, Duque waited for 3 days, relying on the system elf to review the official documents while waiting for news from Malygos. It seemed that history had taken an unknown turn, because Duque killed Nesario ahead of time. The news from the Temple of Sleeping Dragon was that the Blue Dragon King had finally decided to send Kallegos and Madagosa to supervise the restoration of the space around the Sunwell. Duque and Queen Sylvanas met the 2 blue dragons on the dilapidated Isle of Quel'Danas. Kallegos looked the same as before. He still had blue hair that Duque found very irritating. But at least Kallegos had used the ultimate transformation spell to give himself a pair of long pointed ears and the exaggerated long eyebrows unique to elves. And his attire was no different from that of a standard noble mage of the Silver Moon Council. If it weren't for the fact that most elves lived long and basically knew all the former members of the Silver Moon Council, he might really have gotten away with it. As for Madagosa, she really had the appearance of a human woman. However, the robe she wore and the badge she wore belonged to the Marcus family. In theory, she was here on behalf of the Marcus family to monitor the Sunwell. This was quite interesting. Chapter 1544. Duque could only say that Mathagosa's imagination was not small, and it was quite on point. To push Kallegos back, one had to become a human woman. There were not many human kingdoms or forces that the elves would not dislike, and the Marcus family was the best choice. Now the entire upper class of Cindorii knew that the 3 queens and sisters were Duque's property. Without Duque's support, Cindorei's livelihood would definitely be much worse than it was now. The Blood Elves had rather complicated feelings about Duque. On the one hand, they were grateful for Duque's strong support. On the other hand, they lamented that their most beautiful cabbage had been taken by a wild boar. And a demigod level 1 at that, of course. The overall impression was still pretty good. With the endorsement of Duque and Queen Sylvanas, the elves quickly accepted Carrie, who had returned from learning magic from the Dalajan, and Maddie, the inspector of the Marcus family, as the new guard captains of the Well of the Sun, avoiding direct conflict with the Blue Dragon Legion. Duque secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Before this, Duque had secretly pulled almost 80% of the Alliance's air force into the Long Song Forest. Now that there was no need to fight, Duque was in a good mood. He glanced at Mathagosa and then at Kallegos. Only the Blue Dragon sister could understand his actions. Mathagosa did not avoid it, and directly made a V gesture with his finger in a blind spot that Kallegos could not see. This was definitely not the meaning of victory. This gesture was similar to the guanyu that was often worshipped at the entrance of restaurants. A knife in one hand and 2 fingers in the other. The meaning was simple and straightforward, cheating neither old nor young. I'll cut you down 2 tails for a pound. Mathagosa was telling Duque that he had successfully pushed Kallegos twice. Alas, the love of dragons was so simple and straightforward. Alright, you win, coquettish dragon. Without the Blue Dragon Legion to stir up trouble, Duque could put his energy back into the Alliance. The Alliance's wartime economic model could not be immediately revoked. It was like a taut string. Once it was too loose, it could easily snap if it was tightened again. Duke only ordered the military industry to work in 3 shifts 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, with 2 shifts of 16 hours a day. There was no other way. Historically, when the Allied armies attacked Northrend, they relied on men and horses. The number of soldiers and civilians who froze to death in frostbite was astronomical. Letting the soldiers who were cold, tired, and lacking supplies fight against the tireless dead was no different from sending themselves to their deaths. Duque wanted to reduce the Alliance's losses, and having Kudrin build a forward operating base was only the first step. More importantly, the Alliance army changed. With the precedent of the millions of German troops attacking the Soviet Union in World War II on Earth, Duque, who knew the bitter cold of no scent, had made a lot of preparations. There were 1 million sets of military coats for humans, dwarves, gnomes, elves, Draenei, and even 30,000 sets for orcs. Then there were matches for the fire, as well as whale oil gels and industrial gels, that had been cut into small pieces beforehand. Whale oil was easy to process, but the production was too low. Industrial gels were one of the byproducts of refining petroleum. Although it was a bit smelly, it was the best fuel and no scent. Since it could be burned, it was the best for the soldiers to cook on a picnic. Imagine marching for a whole day in a world of ice and snow dozens of degrees below zero. If they could only eat cold compressed biscuits and drink snow water that would freeze their stomachs, what a nightmare it would be. If there were fragrant hot soup and food, it would be extremely beneficial to physical recovery and morale boost. In addition, the writing of the winter code, the weaving of winter clothing, sleigh training, and all kinds of trivial things might seem unremarkable. But those who knew would know at a glance that it was because of the various preparations made before the war that the soldiers could play their due combat power on the front lines. The Alliance is really lucky to have a commander who doesn't treat soldiers as mere consumables. Every officer praised Duque in unison. Thinking about how Duque could be a god who didn't care about anyone, everyone's respect and love for Duque deepened. It was lucky to have a wise leader such as the Horde. At least under Sal's leadership, more than 2 million orcs escaped from Draenor. However, a little bit of luck was not enough to bring a horde with millions of people on the road to happiness. After not having to face the outland that was gradually collapsing, food and other problems became increasingly prominent. What was even more unfortunate was that because the Dragon Sleep Temple had previously concentrated most of the energy of the planet's protection array to bombard Kill Jaden, many demons had been released. In fact, the number and quality of demons that had parachuted into the Eastern Kingdom and Kalimdor were about the same. However, the Alliance not only had a perfect magic communication system, as well as a patrol system in each village and town, but also a magic net that covered a large area. It was no exaggeration to say that if there was any movement in the Alliance, Duque, as the highest commander, would be the first to know. Orders were relayed from top to bottom, and elite troops were sent to eliminate the scattered demons in the bud. The Horde was different. The addition of 2 million people made places, like the Barren Lands, more populated. Unfortunately, orcs were not creatures that didn't eat or drink. They instinctively gathered in the few oases in the Barren Lands. Because of their living habits and the lack of planning by the upper echelons of the Horde, this led to the rapid consumption of water resources. At the same time, the concentration of population encouraged the spread of demons. Several times when the Horde discovered the problem, thousands of people had died, and several villages had been completely destroyed. The entire land of Kalimdor could be said to be full of beacons. So having a transmigrator as a leader was not only luck, but also bliss. Unknowingly, the gap between the Horde and the Alliance did not shrink because of the influx of a large number of people. Instead, it became wider. After all, the Horde had problems digesting the population, and the conflict between the new Horde led by Sal and the traditional orcs from Draenor began to expand. Just as one side was recuperating, and the other side was in turmoil. It was autumn of the 25th year of the Dark Portal. On October 3rd, Sal suddenly received bad news. What? We lost contact with the entire Blackbone clan? There are even traces of corpses crawling out of the graveyard. The Blackbone clan was just an inconspicuous small clan among the thousands of orc clans of various sizes. But the death of an entire clan, and the possibility that they had become undead soldiers, touched Sal's sensitive nerves during this period. It wasn't that the Alliance didn't remind the Horde that the Scourge army could come again at any time. But Sal was almost broken by all kinds of internal affairs. After all, before the Scourge army came again, half of the Horde had to starve to death. Throughout the spring and summer, the Horde was struggling for survival. Chapter 1545. It was obvious that the tribe would have to pay for their carelessness. The current situation was like an endless loop. The tribe lacked food, and hunting alone was unable to meet the needs of the rapidly increasing orc population. The Alliance was not a charity. If you wanted food from the Alliance, you had to exchange it with ores. Traditional Draenor orcs also hated the act of engaging in productive work. Not only did they refuse to be miners, But the clans also refused to hand over their own hard work to the tribe. Since there was nothing to eat, the clans followed the tradition of robbing other clans. If the clans next to them did not have food, they would go to places with food like locusts. In the area controlled by the tribe in Kalimdor, the most fertile land was the grassy Thunder Cliff. Many starving orc clans ignored Thrall's ban and reached out to the Taran Kodo herd. In their eyes, this kind of huge beast was worthy of the tribe's warriors. Cairn Bloodhoof ran to Thrall to complain every 2 or 3 days. Thrall repeatedly forbade the orcs from attacking the Taran territory, but the poaching situation was still very serious. Not only poaching, but there were also private fights every day. Draenor orcs, ogres, and even Grill's subordinates, Gallen, all came to Thunder Cliff to eat. This drove Cairn crazy, and he almost announced that the Taran would withdraw from the tribe. In the end, Thrall had to let Varrock Salyafar patrol the border of Thunder Cliff with the chief's personal guards. Those who were caught poaching were publicly executed, and the situation was barely suppressed. Unfortunately, Thunder Cliff was the shortest and most convenient passage to the desolate land. As long as the Taran stayed in the tribe, there was no reason to refuse the orcs to pass through their territory. It made the Taran watch every orc passing through the road like a thief. This further exacerbated the conflict within the tribe. Now, seeing the report that the Scourge army was likely to sweep through Azeroth again, Thrall, who was inspecting the crossroads of the Barren Lands, felt deeply frustrated after reading the report. Was I wrong? I spent half a year, but I still couldn't let my people live a stable life. His eyes, which were always incomparably firm, began to have a confused look. Wajin did not know how to persuade Thrall, so he could only pat Thrall on the shoulder. No, Chief, you have done very well. No one in the tribe will do better than you. Actually, Sar was also bewitched. Even in Duke's celestial empire, it was not a simple thing to change from a nomadic people to a farming people, and it was not something that could be done in a short period of time. Throughout history, the Han had assimilated many nomadic tribes, but it often required the efforts of several generations to constantly change their customs and provide better living conditions and job opportunities before the transformation could be completed. Originally, the best way to divert internal conflicts was war. Unfortunately, the Alliance would not give the Horde such a chance. The absolute difference in power was not only known to the orcs that Thrall had brought from the Eastern Kingdom. Even the orcs who migrated from Draenor knew about it. While the Alliance was transporting the orcs, under Duke's secret guidance, they did not hesitate to show off the Alliance's muscles. The disciplined soldiers, the earth-shattering cannons, the rumbling tanks, and the gigantic battleships. Even if the targets were scattered demons or crazy evil beastmen, it was enough to leave a deep impression on anyone who saw it. To be honest, Sal felt like it was a miracle. Almost every night when he lay down, he wondered if the Alliance would turn around and destroy the Horde without the oppression of foreign enemies. However, at this time, Sal could not think too much about it. He would never forget how he led the newly freed Horde to fight the Scourge Legion in the southern Dalagen 10 years ago. Even if the Horde now had a branch of the Forsaken who did not go too far, could not be compared to the Scourge Legion who spread death wantonly. Alas! Sal sighed deeply. Wajin passed the order to gather the warriors of the Frostwolf clan and select warriors suitable for the cold weather from the tribe. We have no choice but to accept Duke's proposal for an expedition to Northrend. Who is going to lead the army? Wajin was not actually asking but reminding Sal. Now that the atmosphere in the Horde was so stiff, most of the other races were unwilling to go on an expedition. No one wanted to go out here and have their homes raided by their own people. Especially the Tauren. The Alliance had put forward a requirement for cooperative warfare, and most of them were infantry. If the Tauren did not go, then only the orcs could fight in close combat. Sal's eyes were filled with sorrow. Just as he was a little hesitant, a young and majestic figure came into his sight. It was a burly young orc. Unlike the traditional Draenor orcs, he was more disciplined, and he also believed in the ideals of honor and firmness that his father believed in. And his character determined that he would be a brave warrior until the last moment. What do you think about letting Draenor go? Dranos Seraphar was Dranos Seraphar, also known as Little Seraphar. He was the young son of Varrock Seraphar, and the nephew of the Horde's great hero Brock Seraphar. Whether it was bloodline, status, or battle record, he was the leader of the younger generation. However, will the Alliance think that we are not good enough? Wajin cautiously reminded Sal. Sal smiled bitterly. Can I leave in this situation? Could Varrock walk away? Or are you going? The leaders of the Horde could not leave. Now the Horde was like a barrel of gunpowder, exploding at the slightest touch. If Sal was not here, the Horde would self-destruct without the Lich King's attack. Wajin, as the first advisor under Sal, was not only the leader of the trolls, but also the mediator. Many things that the chief could not come forward, he would come forward. Cain was nervous, so of course he would not go out. Anastrian would not appear in front of the Alliance, if he had a guilty conscience. As for Galavix of the Rustwater conglomerate, the ruthless and cunning prince of trade, would he be willing to go to the battlefield for the Horde? There was no other way. They could only pick the tall ones. Sal comforted himself and said to Wajin, the Alliance has many talented people, and the Horde must also cultivate their own talents. Otherwise we will fall behind. Sometimes we can only let go, and let the younger generation go. In fact, Sal was also very young. He was now 25 years old. Unfortunately, Sal had started his career early. 10 years ago, he had already become the founder of a new tribe, and had become more senior. Woking could not refute what he said, and cautiously said, Duke Marcus' personal integrity is still very good. At least he has never broken his promise, nor has he deliberately harmed the Horde. I can only hope that everything goes well. Sal sighed. Chapter 1546. On the Alliance's side, Duque, who was in his own study in Karazhan, felt his balls ache when he heard that Thrall was really going to send Salyafar over. Damn, was he really going to repeat the Gate of Heaven's Wrath? The answer was obvious. Only a moron would do such a thing. In history, it was the Stormwind City Regent, Duke Bolvar for Dragon, and Salyafar who led the Alliance and Horde armies to fight side by side against the Gate of Heaven's Wrath. Then Lich King Arthas, who was supposed to be in charge of the Iceground Fortress, appeared. How could Salyafar, who had the word brave carved on his chest, be afraid when he suddenly saw the enemy boss? He just went for it. He wanted to hack Arthas to death with his axe. In the end, not only did the Japanese not succeed, but they were also taken advantage of. Second Full used Frostmourne to cleanly cut down Salyafar Jr., just as the war was about to break out. The Allied forces fell into the Dreadlord Verimithas's trap. Master Potioneer Putre of the Royal Pharmacist Association of Undercity betrayed them. This old fox used a new plague to kill all the undead, Alliance, and Horde soldiers at the Gate of Heaven's Wrath. Duke Bolvar was on his last breath, and Lich King Arthas retreated with heavy injuries. The Red Dragon Queen, who rushed over after hearing the news, found that the poison was spreading quite seriously. If it wasn't suppressed, all of Northrend would become a world of death. After all, the Dragon Slumber Temple was also in Northrend. Alexstrasza directly ordered the Red Dragon Legion to set fire to the battlefield with a powerful and blazing dragon breath to suppress the spread of the plague. In the original battle at the Gate of Heaven's Wrath, it could be said that the Calamity, the Alliance, the Horde, and even Sylvanas were the losers. It was like 4 people playing mahjong, and everyone had lost. In the end, the mahjong table was winning money. The situation in this life was very different from history. Duque couldn't afford to lose any of the Alliance's higher-ups, just for a little Salyafar, who only knew how to be reckless. Moreover, there were so many veterans of the Alliance who had changed their fates and survived. When would it be Bolvar's turn to fight? So far, Bolvar didn't have any notable achievements. He was just someone who looked after Varian's house. Duque couldn't bear to send young Salyafar off with William and his team. But won't Anastrian cause trouble? Duque seemed to be muttering to himself. But there were 2 other beings in the room. Without a doubt. Definitely. The 2 voices spoke almost at the same time. And then they looked at each other. Queen Sololas took the initiative to lower her head and avoid eye contact, while Vashti, who was dressed in a white lace-made uniform, raised her chin slightly, seemingly a little proud. Duque rested his chin on his hand. He knew that Vashti was faking it. She used to be a palace maid. First, she fought secretly with other maids in the palace for 1,000 years. Then, she fought openly and covertly in the dark underwater world for 10,000 years. Her skill in palace fights was no less than that of the Eridar twins. If Duque hadn't secretly held back before Vashti became a Naga and inadvertently made himself her only beacon of hope, Duque wouldn't have the confidence to control such a powerful demigod with a fickle personality. Moreover, Duque didn't trust the Eridar twins. It was indeed more suitable for Vashti to suppress them. Salolas, I want you to keep an eye on the tribe's bones. Salolas immediately understood. I'll focus my attention on the guys other than Anastrian. In a rare moment, Duke and Saloras looked at each other and smiled. It was good to have a smart subordinate. As a female demon, who had personally come into contact with the Sun King, she could be said to have an extremely accurate grasp of the human heart. Since the Sun King wasn't willing to jump out immediately when Kil'jaeden descended and shout, "Welcome to the King's army," then he definitely wouldn't dare to personally make a move on such a small matter in no scent. Now, he had a very advantageous position. Back then, he had persuaded a few dreadlords to rebel against the Lich King. Afterwards, these few dreadlords followed him into the tribe. According to him, these guys were just like the demon pets enslaved by the warlock. They were very obedient. This was bullsh*t. Even Duke did not dare to say that he could completely control the Eridar Gemini. How could a mere breaking dawn from the Anastrian district dare to say that he could control a few dreadlords that were at least at the beginner stage of the Void Lord rank? He was already on Kil'jaeden's side, so it was reasonable for him to collude with the dreadlords. If anything happened, at worst, he would push the dreadlords out to take the blame. It didn't matter even if Sar didn't trust him. The tribe seriously lacked magic professions, and just relying on the tribe's second-rate warlocks wasn't enough. As long as he still had value, Sar wouldn't casually deal with him and his Forsaken subordinates. Letting Salolas monitor the Forsaken was like fighting poison with poison. The only thing that made Duque a little uncertain was Arthas' next move. Arthas, who had already become a Lich King, was extremely arrogant. Back then, Duque had slapped him in the face, once broke his hand, once chopped his waist, and even robbed Jaina. With Arthas' personality, he definitely wouldn't be able to take this lying down. Now, as expected, the plague that spread the scourge had come. However, in the face of Salola's methods, the few weaklings from the cursing sect quickly confessed how many times their former boss had been to the brothel. Moreover, the Alliance had recently implemented the strictest quarantine system. Any food that was over 100 kilograms had to be personally inspected by a cleric before it could be circulated in the market. Furthermore, it was inspected once a day. This move of the Scourge army had tricked the Horde, and the Alliance was unharmed. At the same time, the Alliance also managed to gain a wave of reputation. When the Holy Knights publicly burned the cultists of the cursing sect, together with the food that had been corrupted by the plague, outside the main cities, the people's calls for battle reached its peak. This level of conspiracy was at most harassment. Originally, in history, Naxxramas had once again visited the territories of the Alliance and the Horde, announcing the return of the Lich King with death and destruction. Now Naxxramas had nothing to do with the two idiots. Duque had put a lot of effort into the flying fortress, making this fortress no less inferior to Duque's own mage tower. Only an idiot would think of attacking Naxxramas by force. Otherwise, avoiding a flying fortress directly under the jurisdiction of a demigod would be the right thing to do. Of course, Duque couldn't take Naxxramas to the Iceground fortress. Although Naxxramas was easy to use, it had a fatal flaw. It wasn't on any source of magic. Although the characteristics of the Titan creations allowed it to float in the air, with only a small amount of energy. In order to maintain its floating state, it ultimately relied on the support of Duque's weave. The Iceground fortress was located on the largest elemental passage between the Frost elemental realm and Azeroth. Who was strong and who was weak It was clear at a glance. At this time, Vash swayed her waist, walked over, and gently massaged Duque's shoulders, reminding Duque, "Men always want face." That you're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.